Welcome to Halifax.
Getting drunk from 7 to 3. Overindulged in flesh like it's free. We're on a fast ride where monkeys killing time with machines. Making love that we don't even feel. You don't even notice if it's hot or it's me. But somewhere deep, calling out the world is turning down. So you just do what you do. Using all that's left. All that's left. All that's left. All that's left. All that's left.
Innovation is in our veins. Soon the whole world will know our names. Sharing our knowledge and freedom reign. We here for the people, you know it's our way. Setting foundations is part of the dream. It doesn't matter if you're new to the game. Listen up now, cause we all gon' say, elevate, 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 higher, elevate, 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 higher. We gon' rise up, we all gon' shine. Work through adversity, stay on the grind. Elevate, elevate, this is our time. Elevate, elevate.
We get a double treat today. 2 live streams, one in the morning, one here in the afternoon, depending where you are. Wherever you are in the world, wherever you are in the country, well, maybe it's a little bit later in your morning finally, and that's a nice change for you as we talk and discuss. We're not discussing anything, what am I saying? We will be live streaming Travis Dhanraj's testimony in front of a committee happening in about, literally, I imagine things will start getting going here within the next 2 minutes. I'm excited to be on here with you to discuss all this, watch this all transpire. Hey, baby, this is going to be something to watch. Travis, you've probably seen his videos, promising that he wants to show off what's going on, explain and hear, let people know his perspective, what he's seeing on the goings-on of the CBC. That is what we will be watching today. We've had our suspicions. We've had our questions about what goes on at the CBC. Now, today, we'll be getting some answers to what happens behind the doors at CBC. We've been told that our $1.5 billion public broadcaster is in it for the interests of Canadians. However, what we've seen is no, they're interested in the interests of specific Canadians, and especially the Canadians who have a say over the funding that CBC gets. That is what we've seen as regular individuals, people, and have had questions. I've made accusations. I've made statements. And CBC has always said, no, it's all good. Don't worry about us. Don't worry about us. And, well, we've said, well, no, we're going to worry about you. And then we had the issue of Travis Dhanraj come out. And he made some statements. And he got ousted out of the CBC because he wanted to have conversations around all sides of the aisle. That's what he wanted. And they said, no, we're not going to do that here. Not going to do that here. So we are supposed to have started here about a minute ago. The stream has still not started yet. We're still on waiting, so we will continue waiting with you at this present time. And we'll continue watching and also keep an eye on the chat, because there's also times where it's happened where I've been waiting, and just the browser doesn't refresh. And then there's chats like, hey, dude, it started. That's happened before in the past as well. So that is not out of the realm of possibility at this present time. So we are going to continue watching and making sure we kind of clamp down when they get started here. However, we will acknowledge the chat and see what you guys are up to. And I'll let you know that's kind of what we're expecting to be seeing here very soon, very shortly. We have the likes of, I'm biased when I read this. So John Bon Zombie says, "You rock, Josh." You know what? Thanks, man. I appreciate that. That means a lot. Slimy Dipper says, for the CPC to win elections, approximately extra 1 million young voters are needed. So oldish conservative voters should work on that. I would be actually very hopeful for if youth interest and election and voter results increased. That would be crucial for the Conservative Party for that to happen. I do agree. The stats say so. The stats say so. And we are still waiting. Let me see what let me make sure. I'll be checking other streams as well to see if I'm just the only one who isn't going here. Let's turn that off. What's this? Is CBC streaming it? Oh no, they're definitely not. Oh, surprise. I'm curious if CPAC will actually be streaming it. I highly doubt it. It's like very, very few outlets are actually covering this right now, which I find it's one of the most fascinating stories to be covering. But alas, it's not that interesting, I guess. We don't want any type of, what do they call it? Transparency? They're not fans of transparency. So I imagine what's happening right now is they're getting the room set up, making sure all the mics work and all of that. Travis and the other witnesses are probably getting their notes ready, getting their scripts ready of what they want to say. And that's probably what we're waiting on at this present time. And there's also very huge possibility that politicians are late. The ones who are supposed to be running the meeting. It's very possible they're also running late. The amount of times I've heard people talk about when they've had to go into committee and give statements, a lot of the time, the politicians themselves are late getting there. So that's also probably why we're running late as well. For a wide variety of issues. Wide varieties of issues that could be happening. So in the meantime, we have you. We have the audience. You have me with you at this present time. And as we wait, I imagine probably the next 5 minutes, this thing will get going. We will kill some time. And we will kill some time by doing this. Just as a reminder, let's bring people up to speed of what Travis, actually it would be on Can't Be Censored, what Travis Dhanraj posted the other day, and we're getting people geared up. You haven't seen this already? Well, you're going to see it right now. And this will hopefully get you ready for what you're going to be watching here fairly shortly.
Hey there, folks. Well, as many of you know, I have been trying to rebuild my life and my career on this very set after my career in journalism ended in a very public way at the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Now, I've told part of that story here, but because of ongoing legal proceedings, I couldn't name names, I couldn't connect the dots, I couldn't lay out who made which decisions and how they were justified behind closed doors. And for months, that silence has worked in the CBC's favor. They have denied everything up until this point. They've tried to control internal and external messaging about the situation and about me. They've tried to discredit me. They've tried to let the story fade, hoping to run down the clock, hoping the professional consequences would break me. Now, I'm battered and I'm bruised, much more than most will ever know, but I am not broken. And I am not shutting up, because this story matters. Next Tuesday, I will testify before a parliamentary committee studying fairness in media. Now, I won't be able to say everything because my ongoing human rights case is before the commission, but I will be able to name names, describe decisions, and paint a better picture about what happened inside the CBC. And I promise in the weeks to follow, more will come into focus. Now, I know this story has become partisan. Some want the CBC dismantled, others defend it wholeheartedly. I'm a hero to some, a villain to others. But my mission has never been to destroy the CBC. It's about whether a $1.5 billion public broadcaster plays by the rules it lectures everyone else about. So let me speak right now directly to my old boss, to Brodie Fenlon, the editor-in-chief of CBC News. Brodie, hey there, it's been a while. If CBC believes in transparency, then prove it. On March 10th, carry the hearing live. No edits, no summaries, no carefully curated clips. There is a lot of news going on right now, I understand that, but CBC does have a website. They have, from what I understand, a YouTube channel, so stream it there if you have to. Let Canadians hear the names. Let them hear about the documents, the practices, the way things run behind the scenes when the cameras are off. Let them judge for themselves and decide what they believe. Well, if CBC won't do that, well then independent media, do your thing. Because facts matter. This story matters. Because I assure you, it is much bigger than just me. We'll see you on Parliament Hill.
So boom. That's what we're watching today, folks. That's what we'll be seeing. And as we continue to wait to see as this thing gets started up here, which should be very shortly, I imagine, that's what we can be expected to be seeing today. We will get not just Travis. There will also be statements from other witnesses as well as what they've seen and what's been going on. And this is why it's funny that we're waiting. We're getting stuck waiting on this at the present time, because I'm sure a lot of eyes are on this. Just not the eyes that are going to expand this to the plethora of different types of media across the country. But I'm sure there's a lot of people who are interested in this, and because of how Parliament Hill operates. Like if you've ever had the opportunity to go to question period, for example, you can set up in the gallery. I learned this year that also applies to committee hearings. You can hop in. There is a gallery area for people to go watch some of these committee hearings. And I'm sure some of that is happening as well, where people are trying to file in because, well, this got the attention of a lot of people. And you know what? Because we're waiting, I want to bring this up. I'm going to see if we can pop this open. We'll keep waiting and seeing. Because this, I'm probably going to be doing a little bit about this later today. There's a debate in the House about Bill C9 and Larry Brock going at it with his Liberal counterpart. And we'll play this. And actually, let's do this to be safe. Let's pull that out just in case. But yeah, watch this. Larry Brock going at it. And, oh, baby, this was wild to watch. Let's pull there. Yeah.
There is no attack by this government on our faith communities. And you know what, Madam Speaker? Members of the opposition actually know that. But instead of reflecting reality, Madam Speaker, when we take a look at the amendment that was brought forward for a greater certainty, it provides assurances so that those faith communities can have a higher sense of being comfortable, in part because of misinformation that is constantly being pumped out by the Conservative Party of Canada. My question to the member is, does he not feel any obligation whatsoever, given that there was an election mandate on this issue in dealing with hate crime, that there is a responsibility of the official opposition to at least allow for debate to actually continue and come to an end so legislation can ultimately be passed by a majority?
Member for Brantford, Brent South Six Nations.
In typical liberal, hypocritical fashion, they're making statements. Canadians, faith leaders, you've got nothing to worry about. Once we remove this religious defense. It's been around for 50 years. We're going to take it away from you, but don't worry. Your charter rights are still protected. Where did we hear that before? We heard that during the invocation of the Emergencies Act. It was charter compliant. We heard that from the Prime Minister. We heard that from ministers. We heard it from David Lametti, who very arrogantly told Justice Rouleau, I'm not going to give you my legal opinion. You just got to take my word for it that it was charter compliant. Well, you tell that to the Federal Court of Appeal and the Federal Court trial judge who came to a different conclusion. Canadians will not believe this Liberal government. And if they do, I've got a plot of swampland you can build a dream house on in Florida. Thank you.
So that's the debate going on in the House today. There's, again, lots of news, a lot of stories breaking today. and lots to cover, which we'll cover on our afternoon segment later today. If I haven't exhausted the YouTube notification system enough by then. But that was, that's kind of where things are at, because Bill C-9, they're just trying to rush that thing through, trying to get it done. And again, the argument, you heard it from Anita Anand, you heard this in the question period yesterday, they keep making the argument that this is what we need to clamp down on anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, all of this nonsense. Apparently, as I stated yesterday in my show, I didn't realize that we needed new laws on the books to stop people from shooting up mosques. Oh, sorry, my bad. Synagogues. No one's really shooting up mosques from what I've been seeing, and trying to torch churches. Didn't realize we need new laws about that. But again, the Liberal Party would like us to think that we need their new laws that they try to sneak all these poison pills into in order to get more control. Alas, here we are. So I am constantly in refresh mode, trying to see if this thing will start up. And again, I also am relying on Super Chat at the moment too. If you are seeing this pop up on any other stream and it's just not uploading for me, or sorry, I shouldn't say uploading, but it is not loading for me, please let me know. I want to make sure I don't miss this. But it looks like everyone is just kind of sitting and waiting. We're in a holding pattern right now. And everyone's waiting at this present time. So in the meantime, I guess we'll keep doing what we do. We keep talking to the chat, keep talking about what's coming up in the news today as we wait. We wait and we wait. We're officially now at the point of getting up to 15 minutes behind schedule. So we'll see where things are going. And Francisco Connor says, we have the laws, just not the balls to implement them. Spot on, dude. Couldn't agree more. What is going on here? There you go. So yeah, it's it's true. It's true. Well, the thing is too, it's more of I'm at the point where I don't think it's about us not having the balls to implement them. I think we have very much the interest in implementing them, but there, I think, to be an agenda behind making sure there's chaos ensuing in our streets in order to legitimize more control. That's more so where I'm seeing, and we've talked to numerous police officers and people in these different institutions who are just getting demoralized because they'll arrest somebody and then the system will just let them out the next day. And so you get police officers are getting to the point where well, what are we even doing here? Why am I even trying? This is getting ridiculous. Why am I even bothering? So it's a systemic issue at the highest degree where our courts are just a joke at this point, to the point our police are saying, I'm not going to go through the trouble of arresting somebody because they're just going to be let out anyway. So we've seen the videos of police just watching crimes take place in our cities because, well, it's easier just to watch it and supervise it in case someone actually gets to a point of maybe killing somebody else, then they might step in. But anything leading up to that, they'll kind of it's not worth the trouble. That's what our court system has created, the mentality our court system has created. We have Green Tiger that has joined the Elevate membership. Let's go. George Y3886 says, correction, the conservatives have the balls to implement the laws. At least that's what they're saying, for sure. Proud Grammy says, Josh, there's apparently a vote going on and will be about another 11 minutes. Oh, so they're behind schedule because of another vote. It's taking forever. Okay, that's fair. Wow, so we're going to be on here for a little bit more today. I'm actually at the point where I'm like, might as well just do my afternoon show here, clip it, and then I'll release that this afternoon. That's how I'm feeling. So if this goes much longer, because I'll tell you my schedule is, guys. Usually, I start getting ready for my second show at about 12:45 Eastern time. It's usually when I start getting set up for it. I start recording it at about 1:45 Eastern time, and I have it posted typically by about 2:30 Eastern time. So that's typically the timing I go by. Today, if it goes any longer, I don't know if I'll get an afternoon show today, depending how long this goes. So it might just be 2 live shows today, folks. We may not get an afternoon show. We'll see how long this goes. Delays. Lob Kyle says, I watched a video of the Toronto police punishing a guy for an unpaid ticket, and there was a guy smoking the white stuff on public transit. Yeah, that's fair. Tammy Morin, super chat comes in, says, speaking of CBC, where's David Cochrane? It's week 4. That's a great question. Honestly, I've been wondering the same thing to a degree, but also I'm not been too terribly worried. He's just, apparently he's on vacation. A lot of people are taking his spot, and I'm very much okay with it because the people that have been filling in for him at the very minimum have been doing a better job than him, where he's very hyper-partisan in his takes and how he goes about the Power and Politics show. And the others, they have a lean to them, but they at least try to give a vision that they are at least, trying to be bipartisan. David Cochrane has given up on that. So, yeah. Unacceptable Dale says, too much public interest. Committee is suddenly having technical difficulties. The liberal way. Yeah, I wish I could say that was really the issue, but apparently it's just there's a vote that's happening in the same room right now. It's taking time, so they're waiting for that vote to finish up, and then they'll be able that meeting will then depart. They'll come in, have to get set up, so we're going to be waiting for, I imagine, this will be another, we won't get started until about probably 11:30 Eastern time at this point. I think that's what we're waiting on. And I love Carol Monroe is on it too. We love people that are on it. Let's go. Carol Monroe's like, I'm on the website. I'm constantly refreshing too. Awesome. I appreciate it. Having eyes. This is why the chat's so awesome. It's not just me. It's powered by you. And you help kind of get eyes to a lot of these different things. And so I also keep in mind, try to hit the like button if you can at the moment. Hit the like button. As that helps kind of disperse the show and pushes the show to more people. Keep liking, hit that like button. It'd be very helpful. And as well, thank you for everyone being my eyes on the ground to see when, in case things start and I just haven't caught it. Rhonda says Josh will start showing Travis in committee once it starts. Yes, 100%. Thank you, Rhonda, for doing the legwork for your boy. Really much appreciate it. She is a GOAT moderator. Absolute GOAT. Shout out Rhonda. Say hi to Rhonda in the chat. She's amazing. There's a vote on C9 right now. That's why it's late. Yes. You know what? Let's see. Let's go here. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I don't know. Someone clarify in the chat what the vote is that's going on right now. I completely missed that. People are saying it's for Bill C9, but I don't think that's the case because I'm looking at the schedule right now and I'm not seeing anything on the books. But curious of what that vote is. Go to Garnett and Gina's YouTube page. Okay, I'll check out. We'll take Garnett. What's Garnett saying? All right, this vote's going on right now. We're going to hop over to the Bill C9 vote right now. Thank you, chat. Chat is, you guys are real ones right now. The proceedings on Bill C9, an act to amend the criminal code, hate propaganda, hate crime, and access to religious or cultural places. That is the vote that's going on right now. That is allegedly delaying Travis Dhanraj's committee hearing at the moment. So that's what we're waiting on. This is the countdown. And then we'll see what the result of this vote is today, which is, this is a nice little juice, some nice juice on Bill C9. Beautiful. We'll continue on waiting on this. See what the chat's saying as we wait for those votes to come in. We'll see what they're saying. This is unfortunately, this is another issue. Yeah, it's a closure vote. Yes, exactly. Travis McDonald says, I'm calling it now. If this gets passed, mass arrests will start to happen. It's that's a big statement. It's a big statement. Potentially. I don't think they'll move that quick. That's the thing. I had John Carpay on here, and we were talking about the potential for Bill C9 to come down the pipe. And likely they won't act right away because it'll be too much to the system. They will start acting quietly in the background, citing Bill C9 with their powers, and you'll quietly hear about those stories. That's typically how this government's operated, and how really any government trying to keep control operates, is especially in the way our system kind of works. They don't want to get headlines right away because of Bill C9. So I think it'll be a bit slower. It'll be a bit more of a slower drip. Leroy says, the thing that scares me most about Carney's is refusal to answer questions. Yeah, it's like, so I guess it's the one, people have had this debate between Trudeau and Mark Carney. At least Trudeau, he was willing to be in front of the cameras. He loved the cameras, was a huge fan of the cameras, but he always was lying all the time. And so people just get really frustrated with that, and it got very tiresome over time. Whereas Mark Carney just isn't around. He's just not around and doesn't answer anything. And so it's like, what poison do you, to pick your poison at this present time? So you get Mark Carney, don't know where he's really up to and what's going on, or you get Trudeau, who's in front of the cameras all the time, but he's lying to you all the time. So it's which one do you want? Which one would you prefer? It's both. They're both toxic, both rough. But which one would you prefer? It's one of those, what are those questions that people ask, those games that people play? Would you rather lie down on a bed of broken glass or put your hand in a blender? I don't know. It's like one of those questions, right? Like neither is a great option, but I guess one's less painful than the other. Who knows? Lots of debates happening in the chat. And honestly, this is a good thing. We literally have 1,200 right now concurrent viewers. It's building. It's building. The anticipation is there, folks. But yeah, I think at this rate, the longer this goes and the longer we wait, I am probably not putting out an afternoon show today. Probably not going to happen. Yeah. I don't think it's going to happen today, folks. I'm sorry. But that's okay, because we get this. And this will be, I'm assuring this will be an amazing, worth the wait committee meeting today to hear from Travis Dhanraj and others of what's going on at the CBC. All right, vote call is coming in. What is going to be the result of this, folks? Let's take a listen in here, shall we? I'm sure they're summarizing, looking at the results, pulling it all together. Here we go.
Hi, folks. Just cutting in here very quickly to explain the context of what's happening. So the House of Commons is now about to vote on a closure motion. This is a Liberal motion to limit debate, to shut down debate on Bill C9. So Parliament's voting on that now. I'm not in the House of Commons because I'm going to vote remotely by app. And other members will be voting in person. So you'll see that vote unfold. You'll see who votes in favor of ending the debate and who doesn't. And then after that, debate on this provision will resume. So let's go back and you can watch the vote as it's happening.
Duclos.
Monsieur Duclos.
Mr. Wilkinson.
Mr. Wilkinson.
Monsieur Guilbeault.
Monsieur Guilbeault.
Ms. Jazik.
Ms. Jazik.
Mr. Fragiscaros.
Mr. Fragiscaros.
Ms. Sahota.
Ms. Sahota.
Mr. Belanger, Desnati, Mississippi, Churchill River.
Mr. Belanger, Desanati, Mississippi, Churchill River.
Ms. McLean, Esquimalt, Saanich-Chuk.
Ms. McLean, Esquimalt, Saanich-Chuk.
Madame Chenette.
Madame Chenette.
Mr. Nagvi.
Mr. Nakvi.
Mr. Housefather.
Mr. Housefather.
Mr. Duguid.
Mr. Duguid.
Mr. Fisher,
Mr. Fisher,
Mr. Biddle,
Mr. Bithole,
Mr. Lewis Kitchener-Conestoga,
Mr. Lewis Kitchener-Conestoga,
Mr. Bardisi,
Mr. Bardisi,
Madame Kayabaga,
Madame Kaibaga,
Mr. Lamoureux,
Mr. Lamoureux,
Madame Brière,
Brière,
Monsieur Gay,
Monsieur Gay,
Mr. Hogan,
Mr. Hogan,
Madame Koutrakis,
Madame Koutrakis,
Miss Chi,
Miss Chi,
Mr. Miles,
Mr. Miles,
Miss Dillon,
Miss Dillon,
Miss Zerowitz,
Miss Zerowitz,
Monsieur Elkoury,
Monsieur Elkoury,
Monsieur Fergus,
Mr. Fergus,
Mr. Fonseca,
Mr. Fonseca,
Mr. Maloney,
Mr. Maloney,
Mr. McKinnon, Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam,
Mr. McKinnon, Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam,
Miss Suds,
Miss Sudge,
Madame Desrochers,
Madame Desrochers,
Mrs. McKelvey,
Mrs. McKelvey,
Mr. Gasparo,
Mr. Gasparo,
Mr. Casey,
Mr. Casey,
Madame Bendayan,
Madame Bendayan,
Madame Fortier,
Madame Fortier,
Mr. Oliphant,
Mr. Oliphant,
Mr. Baptiste,
Mr. Baptiste,
Mr. Classen,
Mr. Clausen,
Monsieur Ramsey,
Monsieur Ramsey,
Miss Church,
Miss Church,
Mr. Morrissey,
Mr. Morrissey,
Miss Yip,
Miss Yip,
Monsieur d'Entremont,
Monsieur d'Entremont,
Madame Lalonde,
Madame Lalonde,
Monsieur Zubiri,
Monsieur Zuberi,
Mr. Yelson,
Mr. Yelson,
Madame Lapointe, Rivière-des-Mille-Îles,
Madame Lapointe, Rivière-des-Mille-Îles,
Mr. Gahir,
Mr. Gahir,
Miss Hefner,
Miss Hefner,
Mr. Carr,
Mr. Carr,
Miss Akon,
Mr. Khan,
Mr. Al Saud,
Mr. Al Saud,
Mr. Chang,
Mr. Chang,
Mr. Clark,
Mr. Clark,
Mr. Connors,
Mr. Connors,
Mr. Danko,
Mr. Danko,
Monsieur Deschênes-Thériault,
Mr. Deschênes-Thériault,
Miss Fancy,
Miss Fancy,
Mr. Fanjoy,
Mr. Fanjoy,
Miss Harrison,
Miss Harrison,
Miss Hurtle,
Miss Hurdle,
Monsieur Joseph,
Monsieur Joseph,
Monsieur Lavoie,
Monsieur Lavoie,
Mr. McDonald Cardigan,
Mr. McDonald Cardigan,
Miss Miedema,
Miss Miedema,
Madame Mingarelli,
Madame Mingarelli,
Miss Naughton,
Miss Nathan,
Monsieur Tumba,
Monsieur Tumba,
Miss O'Rourke,
Miss O'Rourke,
Mr. Rana,
Mr. Rana,
Mr. Saini,
Mr. Saini,
Mr. Sawatsky,
Mr. Sawatsky,
Miss Sodi,
Miss Sodi,
Monsieur Saint-Pierre,
Mr. St. Pierre,
Miss Tesser Dirksen,
Miss Tesser Dirksen,
Monsieur Villeneuve,
Monsieur Villeneuve,
Monsieur Watchorn,
Monsieur Watchorn,
Monsieur Simard,
Monsieur Simard,
Monsieur Champoux,
Monsieur Champoux,
Monsieur Perron,
Monsieur Perron,
Monsieur Sainte-Marie,
Monsieur Sainte-Marie,
Monsieur Beaulieu,
Monsieur Beaulieu,
Monsieur Barcelou-Duval,
Monsieur Barcelo Duval.
Que tous ceux qui s'opposent.
All those opposed to the motion will please rise.
Schmiel,
Mr. Schmiel,
Mr. Bazan,
Mr. Bazan,
Mrs. Block,
Mrs. Block,
Monsieur Deltel,
Deltel,
Miss Stubbs,
Mrs. Stubbs,
Mr. Moore,
Mr. Moore,
Mr. Duncan,
Mr. Duncan,
Mrs. Cramp-Nyman,
Mrs. Cramp-Nyman,
Mr. Morn,
Mr. Moran,
Monsieur Godin,
Monsieur Godin,
Mr. Cooper,
Mr. Cooper,
Mr. Van Popta,
Mr. Van Popta,
Monsieur Généreux,
Monsieur Généreux,
Monsieur Gould,
Monsieur Gould,
Mr. Viss,
Mr. Viss,
Mr. Steinley,
Mr. Steinley,
Mr. Zimmer,
Mr. Zimmer,
Mr. Baldinelli,
Mr. Baldinelli,
Mr. Davidson,
Mr. Davidson,
Mr. Malillo,
Mr. Malillo,
Mr. Calkins,
Mr. Calkins,
Mr. Muse,
Mr. Muse,
Mr. Waugh,
Mr. Waugh,
Mr. Ho,
Mr. Ho,
Mrs. Falk, Battleford, Lloydminster, Meadow Lake,
Mrs. Falk, Battleford, Lloydminster, Meadow Lake,
Mrs. Goodridge,
Mrs. Goodridge,
Mr. Bragdon,
Mr. Bragdon,
Mrs. Gallant,
Mrs. Gallant,
Mr. Vierson,
Mr. Vierson,
Mr. Diot,
Mr. Diot,
Mr. Falk Provencher,
Mr. Falk Provencher,
Mr. Epp,
Mr. Epp,
Mr. Macaulay,
Mr. Macaulay,
Mr. Menegakis,
Mr. Menegakis,
Mrs. Jensen,
Mrs. Jensen,
Mr. Mott,
Mr. Motts,
Mr. Dalton,
Mr. Dalton,
Mr. Dowdle,
Mr. Dowdle,
Mr. Cram,
Mr. Cram,
Mr. Tolney,
Mr. Tolney,
Mr. Petzer,
Mr. Patzer,
Mr. Groslo,
Mr. Groslo,
Mr. Anderson,
Mr. Anderson,
Mrs. Anstey,
Mrs. Anstey,
Mr. Owl,
Mr. Owl,
Mr. Babber,
Mr. Babber,
Mr. Bailey,
Mr. Bailey,
Monsieur Bélanger, Sabrès, Manitoulin, Nicobelt,
Monsieur Bélanger, Sudbury-S, Manitoulin, Nickelbelt,
Mr. Bexley,
Mr. Bexley,
Mr. Bonk,
Mr. Bonk,
Miss Cobinia,
Miss Cobinia,
Mr. Davies, Niagara South,
Mr. Davies, Niagara South,
Mr. Dawson,
Mr. Dawson,
Mr. Gill, Calgary Skyview,
Mr. Gill, Calgary Skyview,
Mr. Gill, Brampton West,
Mr. Gill, Brampton West,
Mr. Gill, Calgary McKnight,
Mr. Gill, Calgary McKnight,
Mr. Gill, Windsor West,
Mr. Gill, Windsor West,
Mr. Gill, Abbotsford, South Langley,
Mr. Gill, Abbotsford, South Langley,
Mr. Leslie,
Mr. Leslie,
Mr. Kimmich,
Mr. Kimmich,
Mr. Holman,
Mr. Holman,
Mrs. Conans,
Mrs. Conant,
Miss Cronus,
Miss Cronus,
Mr. Mahal,
Mr. Mahal,
Mr. Mantle,
Mr. Mantle,
Mr. Mackenzie,
Mr. Mackenzie,
Mr. Rowe,
Mr. Rowe,
Miss May,
Ms. May.
Whoa.
The House will now wait for the electronic voting period to end before resuming its proceedings.
So again, as you would have heard there, so Garnett kind of popped in there for a second there to kind of describe what was going on. And so again, this is a closure motion to essentially close down debate on the issue of Bill C-9 so that they can just get this thing, to then vote on Bill C9 and get it passed through, essentially, as they're trying to get past the debate portion so that people don't get to hear the other side of why Bill C9 can be problematic and is problematic. I am stunned, though, that Miss May voted against it. Elizabeth May saying, nah, not in my house. Wild. Did not see that one coming. That was fascinating. I was like, hey, you know what? Credit to her. Credit to her. It might be for the sake of looks, but I don't care. Who cares? It's nice to see. I'll take what I can get. I'll be honest. People are asking if where the NDP voted on that one. I guess we'll see the summaries come up here. Matt Genereux, you didn't vote no. I'm shocked. We'll see the, as I said, the summaries come up here. The NDP, what they voted for. This is wow. Mark Carney had the time to vote into electronically. Oh, good for him. Good for him. I'm glad he found the time today to do that as he's in Oslo, Norway. Give me a break. So, Bloc voted in favor. Boom, boom. NDP voted against. But I think that's really all they needed. They just need the Bloc's vote, really. So it doesn't really matter. This will probably likely get jammed through. Yeah. So NDP voted across the board, nay. Bloc voted across the board, yay, which gives the Liberals likely the amount of votes they need to get this thing passed. So that's what's going on, what's happening. We will continue to wait for the 2 minutes and they'll give the official decision, but that's what's kind of happened with this at this present time, leading to more further delays on the Travis Dhanraj committee hearing. This is wild, man. It's the pregame for the pregame type stuff, you know? You're just like, oh, you're excited to see what happens, see what goes down. And then you're just like, oh, man, the delays are insane on this. This is going to end up being like an hour late at this present time. Forcing me to be online longer than I would like to be. But that's all good. I love you guys, so it's all good. Bloc better not support the actual vote. Bill says that. And hey, I'll say this much. If they're voting yay on this, they're going to be voting yay on the bill. That's the Bloc wants that bill. They're the ones who like really originated. Like the fact that let's keep this in mind. Stripping out the religious exemption in this bill came from the Bloc. So the Bloc's going to be voting in favor of it. I hate to break it to you, but that's what's going to happen. Scorpio Chick says, we love you too, Josh. Let's go. We love. BCK says, Josh, are you in overtime now? Honestly, at this point, I think I am. Because I usually do about an hour show in the morning. And then I'm usually at this present time, I'm actually right now is about the time I'm starting to get ready to start researching for my afternoon show. Is about time I start doing it. And so the fact that we're likely not going to be starting till about 1 of my time, so noon Eastern time, I just don't think. So I guess technically it will be overtime because I officially will be online longer than typically I'm on a day, and I'm bummed out because I won't be able to get my afternoon episode out today. But it's all good. I'll see you. I'll end up seeing you guys tomorrow morning. So I'll get when this is over, which will probably be about, I imagine, probably 3 o'clock my time, 2 o'clock yours. That I'll get the afternoon off, but whatever, we live on. Carney just shuffled his cabinet. Yes, I heard that was coming down. Let's see what the old shuffles are. Yeah, that was like last week, wasn't it? Here we go.
I wish to inform the House that the electronic voting period has ended. If members were not able to vote due to technical difficulties, they may now use the raise hand function and the chair will recognize them. Mr. Kibble.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Due to technical difficulties, I would like to register my vote as nay.
Mr. Kibble, nay count.
Anyone else? Nope. I will now ask the table to compile the results of the vote.
Yeas pour 186, 186. Nays compte 144, 144.
I declare the motion carried.
There it is. So Bill C9 has been officially, debate on Bill C9 has officially been rammed through, and now they'll end up going to later
governing proceedings on Bill C9, an act to amend the criminal code, hate propaganda, hate crime, and access to religious and cultural places.
We'll maybe wait for a minute while members leave quietly, please, and quickly. And then we will go to the member for York Centre, who has 5 minutes remaining in debate.
So there you go. That's a bummer, but we saw that coming, unfortunately. Why would you want transparency on a controversial bill? We don't want that. That's lame. So that's what we got at this present time. So they will then go to a vote on Bill C9, I'm sure sometime in the somewhat near future. So that's sucks. But here we are, folks. This is the government we have, baby. Wow, what a time. Northern Jive Turkey says this was basically a vote for the bill. Yeah, like pretty much at this present time. Now it's just kind of a matter of time. And again, it has to go through the House, then it has to go through the Senate, and liberals have like bought out the whole Senate, so it's tough. It's tough, man. And so I'm sure now we will likely be coming to what we came here for. The hearing from Dhanraj will hopefully be coming up here shortly. Again, as anyone who's just joining us, we are running very, very late due to different votes and meetings happening on Parliament Hill. It's now delayed the committee hearing for Dhanraj and hearing about the CBC. So if you're just joining us, you haven't missed anything. Congratulations. You're now in the waiting period like the rest of us. Waiting, hoping, and praying that something happens soon, because let's just say I've been very, very excited for this to start. Can't wait to get this thing going. We have Ali Brotherhood says, Josh, genuinely, how does one not be totally demoralized with politics these days? Well, here's the thing, is what you're feeling, and I'm essentially, if you weren't able to join me this morning, I'm just going to reiterate what I said this morning, because we're seeing with the polling as well, is everything you're feeling, you have to really take time. Take time to think about the messaging you're hearing, the actions you're seeing, and the emotions you're feeling from seeing those actions. I know this is going to sound a little like, whoa, maybe you're looking a little too deep into this, but no, walk with me for a second. You see what's being pushed out in the media. You see what's being pushed out by pollsters. You're seeing what's being pushed out just in general over social media. And you look at some of the accounts, a lot of the accounts that are pushing a lot of this messaging, they're typically not real accounts. And those who are just, they're what I would call bad faith actors who continue to push this messaging. And when you start reading this and start seeing all this, and you start seeing what's happened today with the likes of suspending debate on Bill C9, well, what does that make you feel? Well, as this comment just said, makes you feel demoralized. Makes you feel like look to the heavens and saying, why does it even matter? Right? That's what you're feeling? Well, that's on purpose. All of this is designed to make you demoralized. It's to demoralize the conservative base. Get Pierre Poilievre out, demoralize conservative voters so they just stop engaging with politics and makes it so much easier for them to gain the control that they so desire. We talked about this morning where Kate Harrison brought this on CBC. It was likes of why did the Liberals decide to set up these by-elections in the shortest amount of time possible if they're leading by so much in the polls? Why? Oh, could it be that they don't believe the polls as much as they're claiming to believe them? Could that be the issue? Seems like they're trying to get these by-elections done very quickly. Why? Why? And why is it happening the day after their convention in Montreal when they're going to have all their weapons there to go into the Terrebonne riding and campaign for them? Sure, there's two reasons for it. One is they want to get a majority really quickly and get this done. Or two, they don't have as much control as they want us to think they do. So demoralizing you and getting you to quit is their next best option. If they can get you to do that, then they win. And that's the problem. That's why it's important to stay engaged even when you feel demoralized, because that's what gives me hope. And first off, what gives me hope is I'm a disciple first and foremost. I'm a Christian. My hope comes from God alone, in Jesus. But secondly, what gives me hope of what's going on in this country is the fact that so much is happening with the forces that be that continue to divide, distract, and cause a lot of noise with people and try to suppress truth, shows me that we have the upper hand and we will win. We will win. I think that time is coming. We're just going to see this all go out with a screech, but the time is coming. And the thing you need to keep doing is applying that dull pressure, but relentlessly applied to the point where they keep doing crap like this, where they have to suspend debate on controversial bills just to see if they can get them passed. And, well, we keep putting the pressure on them. It will break. It will break. And Constant Stratton says, it will get you down, so discouraged, so I agree that you have to take breaks and get outside, take a breath, or you'll go nuts. That's also true. That is also very true. You need to be outside. Go do things. And I do. That's actually one of the questions I get the most when I'm out. When I meet people who watch the show and talk about the politics of the day, Josh, how do you not go crazy? How do you not go crazy? Well, there's a handful of things that I genuinely find joy in. And I do those things a lot. I do those a lot. Those things. I love to golf. I love to be with my family. I love to go watch movies. These are some of the things that I really enjoy doing. I play lacrosse. I love lacrosse. I'm an athletic person. So typically what I do, when I sign off for my last video of the day, that's what I do. I'm either going outside with my family, I'm going to go play golf, going to the gym, or I'm going to go play lacrosse. I spend as much time as humanly possible doing things. It keeps my head clear so that when I come back to the online world and read everything that's going on, that is what keeps my head in it. Keeps my focus and keeps me sharp and doesn't get me discouraged or get me down. That's the critical piece. Do the things that you love doing. And we have Signs of Life on the website. They have just got the video going here. I'm sure they'll get started here shortly. The webcast title screen's up. So that will be coming up shortly. It's coming out. So, Scorpio Chick says previous frontline healthcare worker who was tortured by everyone, fired, denied EI, lost 50% of my pension, still never surrender, unplug from social media, meditation, and find joy. There you go. Let's go. Diane Martin says, lacrosse rocks. My son is trying out for Junior B right now. That's awesome. Which province and what organization? I played Junior B for Mimico and Toronto Beaches, and we are getting started here, folks. Let's go.
That links to a short awareness video if you need more information. Pursuant to the routine motion adopted by this committee, I can confirm that all the witnesses have completed the required connection tests in advance of this meeting. Please wait until I recognize you by name before you speak, and all comments should be through the chair. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Monday, September 22nd, 2025, this committee is meeting to study the state of the journalism and media sectors. So quite a broad study. And with us today, we have Travis Dhanraj, former journalist, Association des radiodiffuseurs communautaires du Québec, Angela Carrero, executive director. Welcome. FreshNet News, Janet Clow and Mario Bartel. With Friends of Canadian Media, we have Raj Shone and Randy Kitts. Honest Reporting Canada, we have Mike Fegelman, Amanda Eskenazi, and Dr. Haran Shani Narkis. Please forgive me if I've butchered your name. And Paul Deegan from News Media Canada. Good to see you again, sir. So everyone or your organization will have 5 minutes for an opening statement, and then we'll open up the floor to members for questions. We'll start with Mr. Dhanraj. You have the floor now for 5 minutes, sir.
Let's press this. There we go. Appreciate it. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. As a kid growing up in Alberta, I wasn't like most of my friends. Every night, I watched The National with Knowlton Nash. He represented a public broadcaster that belonged to Canadians. Not to power, not to party, but to the public. And that is the CBC that I believed in. Now, many Canadians know the story about one of my tweets. In April 2024, I publicly stated that Canada Tonight had requested an interview with then CBC President Catherine Tate, and the request was declined. Facts. Shortly after, I was removed from the air. Now, on May 7th, 2024, Tate told this very committee she was, quote, not aware of any repercussions. Yet 24 hours earlier, ATIP records show her vice president, Barb Williams, briefed her directly about my situation. Now, that matters because trust matters. The tweet was not the beginning. It was the breaking point. For months prior, tensions had been building, not over performance, but over control. While I was publicly held up as a bold, diverse host, my ability to lead the very program carrying my face and name was quietly being stripped away. CBC's stated commitment to diversity contrasted with realities of tokenism. Still, I pushed forward, creating a nightly panel to showcase real diversity, including of thought. I questioned unequal pay. Why, for example, one contributor who was Indigenous always needed to be paid, while others weren't. When a prominent black journalist requested compensation after appearing doing the exact same job, I was told to reconsider booking him moving forward. I attempted to end this discriminatory practice. Instead, the panel was cancelled. When it came to politics, interviews were blocked under guardrails, governed by an internal document never made public, titled Parameters for Political Guests. Political access was centralized, booking decisions controlled elsewhere. It did not happen once. It became a pattern. It became the standard. Power in Politics, hosted by David Cochrane, was given gatekeeping authority over which politicians could appear on Canada Tonight. When I questioned that control and who was in control, I was viewed as disruptive. Now, at the same time, I raised concerns about a toxic environment. After I sat down with Speaker Greg Fergus for a conversation on Black History Month, Chief Political Correspondent Rosemary Barton circulated internal communications questioning my program, copying senior leadership, insinuating she or Mr. Cochrane should have done the interview. It was an intimidation tactic, which management ignored. I and others raised concerns about bullying behavior by senior figures, including Mr. Cochrane. But while he remained on air, I faced discipline and marginalization. Now, the transcripts of these meetings show the issue was not about my journalism, but about reputational risk to the corporation. I received a written warning carrying the threat of termination. I was placed under confidentiality restrictions that prevented me from correcting public and internal narratives. CBC silenced and intimidated me simply for trying to do my job and fulfill my public service role to Canadians. Now, this is not about left or right. It's not about one tweet or one career. It's about systemic control, tokenism, selective enforcement, and a toxic culture where intimidation went unchecked. When I refused to waive my rights under the Canadian Human Rights Act in a proposed confidentiality agreement right here and a gag order, essentially, my role was not renewed. My union, tasked with protecting my rights as an employee, told me explicitly, quote, "It's very much a normal thing that we use." After 25 years in journalism, my career ended. That dream I had as a kid of working at CBC shattered along with my trust in it. Now, inside the newsroom, the message was unmistakable and did not need to be spoken. I raised concerns. I challenged centralized control and bias. I fought for real diversity and equal standards. I tried to do my job as a journalist. Within months, I was pulled off the air, disciplined, restricted from speaking, stripped of my primetime program, and eventually out altogether. Now, if you were still working there, would you feel safe raising similar concerns? This is how silence becomes culture. It's how whistleblowers are intimidated. Public institutions do not weaken from scrutiny. They weaken when they avoid it. The CBC that I believed in was strong enough to withstand accountability. If it is to endure as a public broadcaster worthy of Canadians' trust and over $1.4 billion of their money, it must be strong enough to withstand it again. Accountability is not destruction, it is survival. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And next we go to Angelica Carrera for the Association des radiodiffuseurs communautaires de Québec. Excusez-moi, je ne sais pas si j'ai dit.
I don't know if I said your name correctly, but you have 5 minutes starting now. Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some observations as part of the study on journalism and the media in Canada and Quebec. I would also like to commend the work of the committee, which made accurate and relevant recommendations in its third report. As the Executive Director of the Association of Community Radio Broadcasters of Quebec, I have the privilege of observing the work accomplished by these stations. We have 37 stations, radio stations, spread across the province, from Montreal to Matagami and the Île-de-la-Madeleine, for example. Most are francophone, but some are bilingual or anglophone, such as the station in Blanc-Sablon. They therefore cover a huge geographical area, sometimes with only meager revenues per year. The work they do is creative, tireless, and sometimes miraculous. There are also media outlets that have been around for many years, which have stood the test of time despite the difficulties. The vast majority of stations employ at least one journalist, sometimes 2 or 3 or 4, for a total of about 50 journalists who work to provide local news coverage rooted in the reality of their respective communities. Community radio stations have always enjoyed the public's trust, and this was confirmed by a study conducted by our association in 2024. Furthermore, it is not enough to simply say that you are doing local journalism. You have to actually do it. The physical presence of journalists in community stations is to be distinguished from cases where news is generated by means other than humans, or where broadcasts merely relay information from the largest nearby urban center. But in addition to the physical presence of journalists and all their volunteers, because there are many volunteers, it is their mission and raison d'être that make them excellent ambassadors for the local community. Their mission is to serve the community in which they are rooted. In fact, it is the community that creates and manages the radio station that has the community's interests at heart. it is important to remember that these are non-profit media outlets, and they play an essential role in protecting freedom of the press and defending the public's right to quality information. Their content is diverse, nonpartisan, comprehensive, and reliable. We therefore provide the kind of local journalism that the committee refers to in its second recommendation. And it is true to say that it needs support, a lot of support. Indeed, as I said at the beginning, community radio stations operate on meager revenues that are dwindling year after year. And when people seem to say they are heavily subsidized, that is very unfortunate, because the only provincial subsidy they receive for their operations does not even cover the normal salary of one of the company's employees, or barely. These subsidies are difficult to renew, even after many years. For the federal government, we have the Local Journalism Initiative, which we really appreciate, and a little project funding is offered for those who manage to qualify, but it is not enough. Fortunately, we are stepping up our efforts to promote the Community Radio Initiative, which could be managed by the Community Radio Fund of Canada, in an attempt to increase the funds available to all community radio stations in the country. We are asking the government for annual operating funding of approximately $30 million to provide around $85,000 per station, which is still very modest compared to the funding provided or needed by other broadcasters. This assistance would help ensure basic financial viability. Otherwise, radio stations must rely on advertising revenue to try to make up for this shortfall. But as several experts have already pointed out, this advertising revenue has clearly shifted to foreign platforms, which are gobbling up almost everything. This is not new. Canadian government money is being used to grow the financial assets of large American companies, multinationals. This goes against the buy local policy promoted by this same government. I would also like to highlight the work we are doing along with our two sister associations, the NCRA, the National Campus and Community Radio Association, and the Alliance of Community Radio Broadcasters of Canada, to try to issue a clear directive on local advertising. A specific portion would be systematically allocated to community advertising. Together, our three associations represent independent, non-profit community radio stations across Canada. We believe that this directive would encourage governments to allocate more of the funds that are already there but used elsewhere to local media. It is a reallocation of existing funds. It's not a new request. But above all, we believe that advertising broadcast in this way would have a much greater and more lasting impact on Canadians. As the Government of Canada continues to invest in public communications to raise awareness of its programs and services, it is increasingly important to ensure that these messages are delivered through channels that truly reach the intended audiences, rather than through digital giants that have no roots or support in Canada. Advertising that does not take into account geographic, linguistic, or digital barriers risks leaving some communities confused and misinformed. In short, the general idea is to help the government fulfill its mission of informing the country's entire population and having a more significant impact on it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Clo and Mario Bartel from Freshnet News. Collectively, you have 5 minutes. I'm not sure how you want to share that.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak at this committee. My name is Mario Bartel.
And my name is Janice Clue. And along with Teresa McManus and Cornelia Naylor, we are the co-founders of Freshnet News, the first nonprofit news cooperative in Western Canada that's union supported. We are veteran community news reporters, editors, paginators, with more than 100 years of combined experience covering New Westminster, Burnaby, and the Tri-Cities in British Columbia, approximately 600,000 people outside of the city of Vancouver. Last April, Glacier Media, now called Lodestar Media, closed our 3 online publications, the New Westminster Record, Burnaby Now, and Tri-City News, in the middle of the federal election. It meant we couldn't cover the all-candidates meetings, our candidates couldn't get their messaging out, and our readers were lost about who to vote for. This is dangerous to democracy.
When I originally landed at the Tri-City News in 1991, virtually every community in the Lower Mainland was served by at least 2 local papers. Consolidation and closures winnowed that down to 1 in most communities by 2015. Then, in August 2023, the same month our Meta social media shut down, Glacier Media stopped printing our newspapers altogether. The company said online was the only way forward. It wasn't. Less than 2 years later, 5 rapidly growing cities and 2 villages immediately east of Vancouver were left with little or no local news source. That meant decisions made at city halls and school boards got no independent coverage. There were no stories about young athletes and emerging artists, no coverage of local events, festivals, parades.
What may have been no longer economically viable to Glacier Media was untenable to the journalists who have dedicated their careers to sharing those stories. After all, we live in those communities too. So the 4 of us got together with a co-op developer, and with the support of our union, Unifor Local 2000, we put together a plan to keep our communities informed. We spent the summer and early fall of 2025 learning about co-op structures and governance, fundraising, and doing community outreach. People told us they didn't know what was happening in their hometowns anymore.
On October 15th, we launched Freshet News Online, a single title covering all our communities. It's named for the annual spring runoff from the northern snows that washed down the Fraser River past our cities. It symbolizes renewal, a fresh start. 2 months later, we revived a print edition. We're monthly for now, but we plan to increase to twice a month in April, with our ultimate goal to return to weekly publication. We're 4 journalists who never had to give much thought to the business side of our craft, the ads that ran between our stories, and the distribution network that got those stories to readers.
The learning curve has been steep, but our journalism skill set has made us adept to changing gears when needed. The communities are responding. Our website traffic grows every week, as do subscriptions to our weekly email newsletter. Advertisers are eager to get into our newspaper, and readers are scooping up the newspapers, 20,000 of them, from our distribution points at city halls, community and cultural recreation hubs, grocery stores, coffee shops, and barber shops, senior residences. We even get calls to replenish.
We truly feel our model of nonprofit, locally rooted journalism that's accountable to the communities we serve is a way forward as corporate media gives up. But what we're doing is not new. In fact, across the United States, as corporate media abandons communities due to lack of profits, reporter-led news organizations and collectives are filling the gap. Still, supports are lacking for journalism startups in Canada. We've come this far mostly on a volunteer basis as we continue looking for jobs. Our severance and EI benefits have dried up. Our fundraising at community events and through an online crowdfunding platform has comprised mostly small individual donations, $10, $25, $100 at a time. We don't have charitable status, so we can't issue tax receipts that might shake loose transformative big money support. Foundation funding frequently looks for a proven history, something that's difficult for a startup to provide. Grant opportunities are often like fitting a square peg into a round hole, and the few that are journalism specific, like the Local Journalism Initiative, are already oversubscribed and don't provide funding for critical supports like hiring ad reps who can bring in ad revenue or covering costs like software subscriptions, insurance, printing, and distribution.
Make no mistake, many of the media's industry's wounds are self-inflicted. Too much growth too quickly back when times were flush, too much consolidation, too many resources expended chasing bad ideas, too many owners that are investors rather than people who believe in the mission of news. Those owners would have us believe the news business is dead. But from our experience in the past few months, since we started Freshet News, has been quite the opposite. People want to be connected to each other and their communities.
So what we're seeing right now here, folks, is, you're hearing it right now, is, are you bored yet? Are you getting kind of tired? You getting a little exhausted? That's exactly what this is designed to do right now. They brought Travis on, but then brought like a balance of voices on to essentially shut him out and quiet him down. And we're going to start seeing more of this as we go out. I think this is clear how they're setting it up. And we'll see how the line of questioning goes. But keep that in mind. That's my take. I'm curious if that's your take as well.
Engaging back and forth between the two of you. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the committee, Friends is a nonpartisan public interest organization dedicated to ensuring that Canadians have access to strong, independent Canadian journalism and storytelling. We advocate for citizens, not for corporations, because a healthy media system is essential to a healthy democracy. Let me begin plainly. The state of journalism in Canada is poor, and in most communities, it is deteriorating further. Over the past decade and a half, hundreds of local news outlets have closed across the country. Millions of Canadians now live in communities with little or no local news coverage. Newsrooms have shrunk. Journalists have been...
So this is exactly what's happening. So they brought in a bunch of people who are advocating for, we want the continued journalist model to continue here in Canada. We want the government to continue funding journalism because we can't stand on our own. And don't get me wrong, smaller publications do have an issue. They do have something to really figure out there. But we have these larger entities as well who are just begging for money. I'm sorry, man. There is better ways to fund this. This is not the way to go about it. And but that's exactly what the messaging is going to be today. You're going to have all these people. They're going to have to take up all the time right now. They're going to keep talking and talking. But get ready for when the questions start, which hopefully will start here. And I think they got 1 or 2 people after this individual. All the questions are likely going to be directed at Travis Dhanraj. Be prepared for that.
The economic model that sustained local news has been destabilized by global digital platforms that capture advertising revenue while investing minimally in Canadian news production. That brings me to 5 areas where federal leadership is essential. First, the Online News Act and the Online Streaming Act are critical to creating a sustainable funding framework for local news. These laws must not be weakened, traded away, or hollowed out through exemptions or side deals. Regulatory certainty and enforcement are essential. Second, eligibility for the journalism labor tax credit should be expanded to include broadcasters. Broadcast newsrooms, particularly local television and radio, face financial pressures similar to print. They too are pillars of local accountability. Third, Parliament should close the loophole in Section 19 of the Income Tax Act that allows full deductibility of advertising on foreign digital platforms. Canadian advertising dollars should not receive preferential tax treatment when they're directed to foreign platforms rather than Canadian outlets. Fourth, the federal government should commit to directing at least 25% of its advertising budget to trusted domestic news organizations, both publishers and broadcasters, big and small. This would strengthen local journalism while ensuring Canadians receive critical public information through reliable channels. Fifth, Canadian news creators must be protected from having their content used by artificial intelligence companies without permission or compensation. Copyright protections, licensing frameworks, and transparency requirements must ensure journalism is not harvested without value flowing back to those who produce it. Finally, a vibrant CBC is part of a strong ecosystem, alongside successful private and independent media. As the national public broadcaster, it plays a foundational role in connecting regions, serving official language minority communities, and maintaining news capacity where commercial models are under strain. I will now turn to my colleague, Randy Kitt.
Thank you, Raj. Chair, members of the committee. Unifor represents approximately 9,000 media workers across Canada. In the last several years alone, hundreds of journalists and media employees have lost their jobs. When newsrooms shrink, the consequences are immediate. Fewer reporters at City Hall, fewer investigative projects, fewer rural correspondents, and more reliance on centralized news content. And yet, the demand for reliable information has never been greater, as Freshet News can tell you. We are living through a period of geopolitical instability, rising inflation, and increased public cynicism. Journalism is one of the few professions capable of grounding public debate in verified fact. Failing to stabilize Canadian journalism means surrendering not just jobs, but our sovereignty. Losing our local accountability, shared facts, and democratic resilience that safeguard our nation's independence. Journalism is essential to a functioning democracy, and the Canadian government should treat it like a national park, something that must be nurtured, protected, and properly funded for future generations.
A strong journalism sector is not a luxury. It's infrastructure for democracy, and it's imperative that we sustain it. We thank the committee for undertaking the study and stand ready to assist.
Thank you very much. We'll now turn to Honest Reporting Canada. I have Mike Fegelman in the room. Do you have colleagues online? I don't. Oh, they are. Here we go. Are you all joining in the 5-minute opening?
I'll be joining in the Q&A component.
Okay, very good. Very good. You have the floor now for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. My name is Mike Fegelman, and I'm the Executive Director of Honest Reporting Canada. We're a nonprofit organization that ensures fair and accurate Canadian media coverage of Israel. We started more than 20 years ago, but the overt media bias that we have experienced and seen over the last 2.5 years has made that era look quaint by comparison. Just hours after thousands of Palestinian terrorists invaded Israel on October 7th, carrying out an orgy of murder, rape, torture, and kidnappings, our taxpayer-funded broadcaster leapt into action. In a letter to editorial staff, George Ahi, CBC's former Director of Journalistic Standards and Practices, warned journalists not to use the word terrorists when referring to Hamas, not to admit that 2005 was the end of Israel's permanent presence in Gaza, which it was, and even when Canadian officials refer to Hamas as terrorists. Ahi wrote that reporters, quote, should add context to ensure that audiences understand this is opinion, not fact, end quote. Hamas is, of course, a listed terrorist organization. It soon became clear for the CBC and for wide swaths of the Canadian media landscape, their role was not to report the facts to Canadians, but to use their immense influence in society to promote a narrow ideological agenda. Present day, news outlets parrot talking points from pro-Palestinian activists and overwhelmingly feature guests with a predictable anti-Israel worldview, presenting them as credible while choosing not to include opposing voices. When anti-Israel groups sneeze, it achieves wall-to-wall news coverage. When Amnesty International accuses Israel of committing a genocide, going so far as to make up a new definition in order to do so, or when a discredited group of non-experts make such claims, they get widespread coverage. Yet when scholars documented Hamas's fabricated death toll, or penned a comprehensive report demonstrating that no genocide took place, they were ignored by our media. The unfounded claims of genocide and starvation were promoted ad nauseum by our media. And as it soon became clear that those allegations were false, reporters didn't apologize. They simply moved on. Now, like a cat chasing a laser dot on the wall, the worst offenders in anti-Israel media bias in Canada, whether the CBC, the Globe and Mail, the Toronto Star, or others, take their cues not from what's newsworthy, but rather what complaints are being made by pro-Palestinian activists. When reporters document the worrying rise of Islamic radicalism in Canada, the presence of Iranian regime officials in our nation, or the impact of Qatari dark money in Canadian universities, they are treated as persona non grata. When a Canadian mosque recently honored Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei and glorified him as a martyr, our journalists ignored this brazen support for terrorism. Our journalists have a solemn duty to hold the powerful to account, to not act as their water carriers. But that's what they've done. Promoting hardline anti-Israel disinformation and acting as unpaid publicists for an immense web of extremist actors in Canada. This media coverage directly contributes to a spike in anti-Jewish hate crimes. When Israel is painted as a genocidal and pariah state and opponents are widely silenced, a target is drawn on the back of Canadian Jews. The incessant demonization of Israel, and by extension Jews, has led to an unprecedented attack on the Jewish community, with terrorist rallies now a regular occurrence on Canadian streets, and Jewish schools and synagogues, as we saw this past week, shot at. While far too many elected leaders and law enforcement ignore this cancer that is in our midst. Over the past 2 years, our media promoted ideology over facts, and in the case of the CBC, did so at the taxpayers' expense. I'm happy to recount numerous examples of Canadian media bias that we have confronted. When our media act as stenographers for a regressive and hateful worldview, it's not reporting the news, it is creating it. And when our leaders stay silent, they let it happen. Our elected leaders must take the lead to remedy this situation. In my written testimony and submission to this committee, I've offered 3 concrete courses of action that you can take directly to counter these critical issues, and I would be happy to elucidate them today for anyone interested. As well, I've brought with me here today 2 colleagues, Dr. Haran Shani-Narkis, CEO of InnoHives, and Amanda Eskenazi, Director of Education at HR Canada Charitable Organization. They conducted a comprehensive review of the CBC's coverage of the Israel-Hamas war and have provided real scientific evidence of asymmetric coverage. It isn't an opinion that the CBC is one-sided. We now have scientific, irrefutable proof. Canadian taxpayers fund public broadcasters to provide accurate, impartial, and reliable information. When media outlets choose ideology over facts, they fail in this fundamental duty, leaving Canadians misinformed on issues of national security, on issues of terrorism and international conflict. This is not merely a concern for one community. It affects every Canadian's right to understand the world as it truly is. Restoring trust in our media is not a partisan issue, but a national imperative. Parliament must act now to ensure that our media serve Canadians with facts, with fairness, and with integrity, because an informed public depends on it, and our democracy requires it. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we have Paul Deegan with News Media Canada. Welcome, sir. You have 5 minutes, starting now.
Bonjour. Média d'Info Canada représente environ
News Media Canada represents about 550 news titles across Canada, from independent weekly community newspapers to large urban and national dailies.
The advertising market in Canada continues to remain very challenging. Simply put, too many ad dollars are being scooped up by Google. Last year, a U.S. federal court judge ruled that Google, which operates in all three areas of the market, the buying, the selling, and the ad exchange itself, illegally monopolized the ad tech market through anti-competitive conduct. News publishers fully embrace and support the responsible and ethical use of artificial intelligence. At the same time, despite deploying bot blockers, we are seeing the theft of our intellectual property on an industrial scale. Companies like Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, which is familiar to all of you in terms of the role their employees didn't play in alerting authorities to the Tumblr Ridge incident, Perplexity, and even Canada's Cohere are ingesting, repackaging, and distributing copyright-protected content directly from published news articles. These companies aren't just providing snippets that one would find through a traditional search. They're providing very detailed summaries and passing it off as their own creation. They're depriving news publishers of audience, subscriptions, and advertising, capturing the value journalism depends on for its survival. Moreover, Google, which is dominant in search, has embedded AI-generated summaries directly into their search interface without providing publishers with an effective opt-out mechanism. If publishers want to block Google's AI crawler, they find themselves de-indexed or unable to attract traffic to their sites. News is an essential input to the knowledge economy. It helps people, businesses, and investors make better, more informed, real-time decisions. It's also a necessary input for the output of the AI companies. But the value transfer cannot be asymmetric. The user needs to pay the creator. The content theft by AI companies must stop, and government can help. First, Public Services and Procurement Canada and Treasury Board can work together to ensure that those on the government's list of artificial intelligence suppliers, and there's 100 and some odd companies on that list, sign a supplier agreement that states that they will use AR material ethically with a commitment to the principles of transparency, consent, and attribution with respect to all copyright-protected source content. Second, the industry minister can ask the Comp Bureau to look into the state of competition with respect to search and AI. Googlebot should be split into two crawlers, one for AI and one for search. That would help level the playing field between publishers and Google and between other AI companies and Google. Those companies have no incentive to sign commercial agreements with publishers when Google's AI services are getting the content for free. Third, the Copyright Act should not be amended to include a text and data mining exception or be weakened in any way. Rights holders must be protected, no exceptions. On the positive side, the Online News Act, while imperfect, is working for Canadian news publishers. Prior to the Act, and in an effort to thwart it, Google and Meta did content licensing deals with a number of news publishers. Most of our members, however, were left out in the cold, without a cent. Today, whether you're a large publisher or a smaller independent, you're getting about $16,400 per year per full-time journalist. For example, the World Spectator from Moosomin, Saskatchewan received almost $80,000 last year. Prior to the Online News Act, most of our members never saw a dime in content licensing from these American big tech firms. Between the Online News Act and the Canadian Journalism Labour Tax Credit, which rewards those who maintain and grow journalism jobs, there's finally a level of predictability for business planning, which is translating into a level of stability in many newsrooms, where we are seeing investment after years of cost cutting. Both these measures should be maintained. Let me turn briefly to government advertising. Despite the government's stated Buy Canadian policy, changing its agency of record, and spending tens of millions of dollars each year, news publishers are not seeing any meaningful federal government ad dollars. Yet when a bank, a retailer, or a car company runs a national or regional campaign, news publishers do okay. That's because their chief marketing officers know we are a great way to reach and engage Canadians. So why are we only seeing micro pennies on the dollar when it comes to the federal campaigns? It's simple. The government's agency of record is doing what is easiest and most profitable for them, and that's programmatic advertising through American big tech firms. We hope the committee will recommend an advertising set-aside that you heard about earlier. An ad set-aside done right with on the publishing side, we, for example, reach 86% of Canadians who engage with newspaper content each week. It's time for the government to think more like a marketer who cares about reach and efficacy. We can help you reach engaged audiences better than anyone. For advertisers, whether governments or the private sector, credible journalism strengthens trust while delivering better business results in a brand-safe environment. There's absolutely no reason the federal government shouldn't use Canadian news brands to inform Canadians. Nous vivons dans une ère de désinformation.
We're in an age of misinformation and disinformation amplified by algorithms. Facts are essential. Quality information created by real people who have fact-gathering, fact-checking, editorial, and legal review, and being accountable costs real money. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, questions from members, starting with Mrs. Thomas for 6 minutes. You have the floor.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you to each of you for being here today. My first set of questions is going to go to Mr. Dhanraj. Mr. Dhanraj, I'm just curious, there was a document that you talked about in your opening remarks called Parameters for Political Guests. Would you be willing to table that with the committee?
I would.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Appreciated. Now, I just want to get to the bottom of this. Can you talk a little bit about any pressure that you experienced at the CBC to shape stories in a particular fashion?
Sure, I can, but I do want to spend part of my time, because I am here speaking, and this is my story, but over the past several days, and even when this story initially came out, there have been other CBC employees, current and former, that have come forward to me that are afraid to speak out publicly, and they have sent me some statements. So I'd like to, if I can, read into the record some of what I have been getting from current and former employees. This is a current employee at the CBC. I've been with CBC for 10 years, and I have witnessed and experienced multiple incidents of the misuse of taxpayer dollars, racism, favoritism, nepotism, sexual harassment, and verbal abuse. And then she goes on to outline specific examples. This next individual was someone that you would all know if I said their name. They left the CBC after a 10-year career. The end of their statement says, without exaggeration, I experienced toxicity every single day, and it was almost always from the same people. It was not subtle. It was not hidden. It was part of the daily reality of working there. She goes on to say that she was set to interview Catherine Tate on air. I introduced myself to her in the makeup room as the host. In front of others, she responded, I didn't know I'd be interviewed by somebody who looks like she is 14. That moment stayed with me. It was dismissive, inappropriate, and reflected a broader culture in which respect was not always equally extended to everyone. On Mr. Cochrane, this is one of his former producers. His toxic behavior extended beyond editorial matters and was more often than not deeply hypocritical. While he publicly presented himself as a supporter of diversity, he actively undermined the contributions of colleagues who were minorities. This is somebody who left the industry and had to go to another country. After about a year of working there as an anchor, this is in Vancouver, I was suddenly removed from the anchor desk. I was told the decision was related to the color of my skin, that as a white person, I did not fit the diversity targets they were trying to meet. No concerns about my performance had ever been raised. My concern was the system and the reasoning behind the decision. My frustration was never directed at the individual who stepped into the role. She was also said that she was forced to check a box if somebody of a diverse background appeared on the air. And she said that that was concerning to her. I believe it's important to include a broad range of voices and perspectives, but reducing interview subjects to a check box felt like an overly simplistic way of approaching something that deserves much more care and thought. And I can go on. There are a number of these stories, and it is shocking. These people have been traumatized. They are scared to come out. They are scared of the professional repercussions. And management, like Andre Lau, like Brodie Fenlon, like Kathy Perry, like Chris Carter, they are concerned about protecting the reputation of the organization as opposed to dealing with these issues when it comes to employees.
So, Mr. Dhanraj, during your time there, can you just outline what years were you there?
I was there. I finished at Global, I think, in 2020. Some say in terms of how that show went. And on the intersection panel, this is a picture here of all the folks that we had on the panel. We've got here one with Raheem Mohammed and Rachel Gilmore. I don't know if you can get two people very far apart on the ideological spectrum as that. Sheila Copps, Brian Lilly, and Faye Johnston. Right? We were having the Canadian conversation, and this panel was canceled. And you also have issues of pay equity when it comes to all of these folks.
So obviously your point here was to create a panel that was full of diversity, not just in skin color or ethnicity or religious background, perhaps, but you wanted diversity of thought.
Correct.
Were you given the journalistic freedom then to move forward and do that for the sake of the Canadian public?
No, I mean, the issue became with the panelists. We had a list of 43 people or 45 people that Power and Politics gave us that said, do not go near these people, right? And some of these folks were like reporters, like Robert Benzie. There's a story breaking at Queen's Park, and we're on at 7 o'clock. We should be able to call, somebody who covers Queen's Park and talk to them. But there were these continued hurdles and roadblocks that were set up to really have a certain group of folks in Ottawa in control of who was allowed on programs. Particularly mine was a concern. And there were repeated episodes of Conservatives being blocked. I mean, I have the G chats right here. I said, in terms of getting folks on, that we need to have balance. This is not about just having a show with Conservatives or just with Liberals. But if Power and Politics is going to have Liberals talking points on all the time, we should have balance as a network. And I said we are in contravention of Section 11 of, I told Brodie Fenlon this, and also Andre Lau repeatedly. We are in contravention of the Broadcasting Act if we are not providing equitable time for all perspectives. So I don't want to flood the show with Conservatives, but I do want to have balance. And there are, and this is all, I can talk to my legal team because some of this is before the Human Rights Commission in terms of how this happened, but there were repeated attempts over and over and over again. At one point, I heard, okay, well, maybe you can have NDP folks on, but Conservatives are a no. It should blow the Canadian public's mind that this was the stuff that was going on.
Mr. Alsud, you have the floor now for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for those opening remarks. My first question is for Ms. Clue and Mr. Bartel. Firstly, it's a pleasure to meet you both. Ms. Royer speaks very fondly of you. I'd like to focus on a highlight of your opening remarks. You noted a lack of support. I quoted this because I thought it was interesting and well said. Grant opportunities are like fitting a square peg into a round hole. From your experience in building a new outlet, what are the biggest barriers facing independent journalism, startups in Canada, and what do you believe would best help address those barriers?
Well, we're journalists, and we've run head on into some of the challenges of creating a viable business and some of the costs of that. The local journalism initiative has stepped up with some funding for us, so that helps
All right, so we're going to kind of let that go for a second, let them talk for those 6 minutes. That's not worth the time at this present time. But that was, first off, Dhanraj's opening remarks, eye-opening, going after the likes of Rosemary Barton and Mr. David Cochrane, who mysteriously has been missing in action for the past several weeks. Is that weird timing? I don't know. And so that was good. And then seeing the response to Rachel Thomas there and all the things that are going on and the people who have been hard done by the likes of CBC who are just afraid to speak out because of the political and professional ramifications of that issue. That is the problem. That's the problem that we're seeing it play out. And to see Travis get this opportunity and get this time is good. But this is by no means, I know this is supposed to be a panel of people of a variety of perspectives, so everyone's going to get a question. But you had to know that it wasn't a committee that's driven by conservatives, it's driven by liberals. They needed to bring in Travis to kind of cover their bases, but they had to make sure as well that they just flood the system so that Canadians feel like they're getting their voice heard, but they're just railroading Travis in the process. And that's kind of what we're witnessing in real time. That's my perspective and take on it at this present time. And Skeptical 59 says, "You thought you could beat the system? Well, this is the system beating you back." Oh, man. Rest in peace. So, anyways. That's kind of where we're at here. They're about halfway through to questioning these individuals. We'll pull back in as they get ready for the next questions to come up here shortly.
So that's dangerous.
Perfect, thank you. Madame Carrero, l'ARCQ représente 37...
Ms. Carrero, your association represents 37 different radio stations. As you know, many community radio stations depend on volunteers and limited funding. What are the biggest operational challenges that community radio is facing today? I'm thinking of lower advertising revenue, digital disruptions with foreign platforms. Well, you stated it well. There are all of the operations done by volunteers, which isn't ideal because even though those volunteers give their time, dedicate themselves, make these radio stations work, any operation that is based on that model is hard to keep up over the years, but it's the case. They manage. But funding for operations, that's the basic need. That's what they need, and it's what they don't have. And then advertising revenue. As I said, and others have said, advertising revenue aren't there anymore. It's gone to foreign platforms. So it would be very good to have a clear government directive, and then radio stations could contribute to getting the government's message through. And then you mentioned the digital transition. That's another element. That's a major challenge. Radio stations are cornerstones for their community. They're on the FM station, but also on the web. They can be listened to. There are podcasts, news. So these are really complete media outlets, but we need to help them with the digital transition. It can be harder depending on the station.
Parfait. Mr.
Great.
Canada's broadcasting and media regulatory framework was designed at a time when traditional television and radio dominated the landscape. Given the rapid rise of global streaming platforms and digital media companies, do you believe Canada's existing regulatory tools are still adequate for protecting Canadian journalism and cultural sovereignty in the digital age?
I believe the tools are there. I think that perhaps the CRTC has been a little bit slow in terms of taking action. The CRTC has done some good things, and certainly the Government of Canada has done some good things. The Online Streaming Act, the Online News Act has been enormously helpful. The tax credit has been helpful, the Local Journalism Initiative. The CRTC made a very important decision last year to ask streamers to contribute a base contribution of 1.5% of its annual revenue to support local news. That's being challenged in court right now, but we feel confident it will go the CRTC's way. Those are all important steps, but more needs
Yeah, there's nothing like listen to people beg the CRTC and beg the government for protection. That's what we continue to hear as the constant theme as you hear these people talk right now. Please protect us, CRTC. We need to take more action so that essentially CRTC will get in the way of more flow of information. And that's what they want. They want the monopoly of information, and they want to continue battling. But as we move on to the next question here, finally, here we go.
Mr. Shampoo for 6 minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank our witnesses today. We have a great panel who represent the importance of the topic we are covering with the study. Madam Chair, before speaking to the witnesses, I'd like to table a motion. I've discussed it with a few members around the table. It's a motion that I will read, and I'd like us to keep a little time at the end of the meeting to debate it. I will read it, and then we can discuss it a little later to not interrupt questions to witnesses. It is a motion being tabled in relation to Radio Canada's decision to offer its programming, its news, on the Prime Video platform owned by Amazon. We find that this is a decision that needs to be explained and questioned. So the motion is that, pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee invite the CEO of CBC Radio-Canada, Marie-Philippe Bouchard, to appear before the committee for a minimum of 2 hours to explain the decision to make EC RDI's programming available on the Prime Video platform owned by the American multinational Amazon, even before it is made available to Quebecers and Francophones in Canada on Tout.tv or on a Canadian-owned platform. Madam Chair, I've prepared this in French and English. It's available to committee members. If I may, I'd like to ask us to reserve time at the end of the meeting today to discuss this motion so we can explain the spirit of this request from the Bloc Québécois. I think everyone agrees. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Once again, thank you to all of the witnesses for joining us today. I think this is an extremely important study. It's a very concerning topic, and the variety of media perspectives here are a testament to that. I'll start with Ms. Carrero, because we've heard a lot about community media, and we know that times are tough. Support isn't what is needed. I also want to ask a question to Mr. Deegan, who represents written media, but you talked about the local journalism initiative. Have you noticed a decrease in support through that program for your members? Is the support still what your members need it to be? Because I know it's essential for local coverage in Quebec and elsewhere. So what is the state on the ground for your members with the local journalism initiative? Yes, the LJI is something we appreciate. It's funding that's there for stations. We haven't noticed a specific decrease as such. Stations request it and they hope to obtain it. However, we always hope it will be renewed in time for budget 2026.
All right, I'll come on back here, folks. We're done with the translators tipping and tapping over here. It's so clear. So what happens, especially with these translators, they're in a room, right? They're watching the feed and trying to translate in real time. And literally, as the translator's trying to translate, they literally have someone coming into the room, clearly talking and walking around them and tapping on the desk that they're working on. And so that's really funny to watch and listen to. So they ask more questions to filibuster and waste time. What we're going to be seeing here is this is going to be the trend throughout this, how this all works, is those who are liberal aligned, you're going to get these questions. Well, they're going to ask questions to everybody else. They're going to ice out Travis. And then when the conservatives get the opportunity to talk, they will then talk to Travis directly. That's going to be the trend and the overall theme you're going to see today. And this is why it's frustrating, because you're covering this for 2 hours today, and we are only going to be tuning in for probably 25 minutes of it. It's on for 2 hours, but 25 minutes of it is actually the information you want to hear. That's the unfortunate part. So you kind of have to wade through a lot of this. and people whining and complaining why they can't get more government money because Google's taking them over allegedly. So yes, that's the game that we're playing here at this present time. And for those wondering, Susan Pick says shampoo is the block. Yes, as I said, you're going to see a lot of the liberal, pretty much a plethora of those in committee are very much liberal aligned in terms of the ideology around CBC. And so they're going to give all the time to people to explain why they should get more money from the government or why the government should get more involved with news. You're going to hear a lot of that. That's what's going to be happening. So I'm obviously keeping a close eye on this right now as I wait for the transition to hit. But this is what we're waiting on at this present time. And that's my favorite part. People blaming AI. AI is taking us over. AI is taking over the news media. They're the reason why we can't get our stuff out. Oh my gosh. It would be nice to see a plethora of these news agencies to, I don't know, get with the times and see and adapt to new technology and use it to deliver the news. What do I mean? There are plenty of ways. Don't do what Sports Illustrated did, which is they essentially made everything AI, created AI writers, and had them write up all their articles for them. Don't do that. Now, what I mean is there's different aspects of news and media that you can automate. I do it here a lot, like all the background work I do. So is like in terms of when it comes to dealing with the marketing or dealing with trying to clip things up, like a lot of I do use AI quite frequently to get stuff out. I do. The things I use AI for those reasons to, one, be able to spend more time researching and spend more time putting the show together directly. The stuff you see me do, I'm able to spend more time on this. And so I automate the menial tasks that I have to do, and AI takes care of that for me. And that allows me to be a one-man show. And, and I do have a little bit of help of people who also are identifying different trending news. But for the most part, a lot of it just gets automated because it doesn't need to be. So you can then shift your focus onto putting, say, more reporters into the field to get stories you want. And you don't have to keep putting money into things you don't need to put money into. It's fairly simple to kind of sort through all of this. But it looks like time is up and we're moving on to the next folks. Let's see what they have to say here.
Next time, perhaps.
Mr. Diot, you now have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Dhanraj, I found your testimony quite fascinating. I was a journalist for myself for 30 years. I was also a national director of the Canadian Association of Journalists. Journalism has indeed changed. You noted that you used to sit down and watch Knowlton Nash as the voice of, a trusted voice. I also remember Lloyd Robertson as a kid watching him. Peter Kent, Stanley Burke. Ironically, Peter Kent stepped down in 1978 after criticizing political interference from the Liberal Prime Minister. So the CBC does talk about being diverse, inclusive, fair and balanced, yet one of the CBC's premier segments is something called At Issue, which features Toronto Star journalist Chantal Hebert, Athila Raj, and Globe and Mail journalist Andrew Coyne. In what universe is this diverse, fair, or balanced as a news panel?
Well, I mean, the National makes their own decisions, I suppose, in terms of who they put on that panel. Their own decisions, I suppose, in terms of who they put on that panel. And it's Rosie's panel, so Miss Barton's panel. So I guess you can have to talk to her about the editorial decisions. But what I was attempting to do on this program was have that diversity of opinion. And when they canceled the panel, I sent a note to panelists asking for feedback, and I was disciplined for that. And I just want to talk about this NDA that I got because it's important. Because I was raising concerns about editorial, and I was slapped with this NDA here, which is a practice that the CBC is using frequently, which was raised by Dave Seglins, and you guys all have the paper. Dhanraj has considered whether he has a human rights complaint with respect to the issues in dispute, and by his signature below confirms that he does not. Further, he confirms that he seeks no right or remedy under the Canadian Human Rights Act as amended with respect to the issues in dispute, and any such claim is barred by this agreement. That should be shocking to every member on this committee. And I hope that other members on the committee take an interest in terms of the issues that I'm outlining here, because it is very important. We should not have a public institution silencing their own employees and having them waive their rights under the Canadian Human Rights Act. That should be shocking.
Getting back to the Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre on your show, can you describe what happened there?
Yeah, well, I basically wasn't allowed to pick up the phone and talk to conservatives. I have some G chats here, which I just want to, read you part of this. I'm talking to my senior producer. I'm saying, okay, this is an editorial discussion. Can we get a conservative perspective on this is essentially what I'm saying. It is a no to the conservatives, I'm told. We can't chase anyone from the entire party. The chase is with PNP. So if Power and Politics is not able to secure a conservative or somebody that presents an alternate perspective, then we are not allowed to. I'm told at one point, we're sure that there's a myriad of other types of interesting guests that you can chase outside of the conservatives. Can I be included on conversations with Power and Politics? That's not how we work. I say to management, by playing petty office politics, we feed into conservative narratives that we have a bias against them. Canada Tonight is a melting pot of news of the day, and politics and decisions from it largely impact Canadians. To management, by playing petty office politics, we feed into conservative narratives that we have a bias against them. Canada Tonight is a melting pot of news of the day, and politics and decisions from it largely impact Canadians. So we need flexibility to respond to emerging stories. So yes, I wasn't even allowed to pick up the phone and call to request Pierre Poilievre. Look at what happened when I had Melissa Lantzman on my show. Right? I was threatened to be pulled off the air, which CBC then said in a news statement they didn't threaten to do that. There are recordings of them trying to do this.
Why do you think they were doing that?
I mean, there's an effort to essentially protect those in Ottawa in terms of their perspectives on these things, in terms of who they want on the show. It should be about, we did an interview with Karen Johnson, my co-host on the new podcast I'm doing. It is out right now. She's another former CBC employee that is talking about the toxic culture. She said that she alleges that she was called a brown Barbie, a bimbo, but she says that it's a very high school culture. And these are things that this is fine. If you have hosts doing that, it's not fine, but but management, you are responsible for dealing with it. And so if management is not going to do anything, if the president of the CBC is going to come here and expect a tongue lashing and then be able to go back to the CBC and continue to get funding without accountability, these practices will continue. So shame is clearly not enough to get the CBC to a place where they will hold themselves accountable. So it's incumbent upon this committee to do that.
Ms. Royer, you have the floor now for 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Merci, Madame Chair. I'd like to begin by welcoming witnesses from my community, Janice Clue and Mario Bartel of Freshet News. Thank you both for your decades of service. When Glacier Media's Tri-City News closed last year, it was a devastating loss for our
All right, folks, we're going to let that continue to play through. I got some breaking news here, folks. Someone just brought this up in the chat. Something I didn't notice. let me see here. This is crazy. If this is, I just want to pull this up here on my end, just double check that this is true. And if this is true, we're going to talk about this right now. In the meantime,
That are we going to start the clock from the beginning?
No, you can have your time back.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, merci, Madam Chair. I'd like to begin by welcoming witnesses from my community, Janice Clue and Mario Bartel of Fresh.
No, I'm sorry, Ms. Roy. The
You're
audio
still
is
not getting
good.
it. Oh,
Right?
no. Okay. Let me just check the connection.
No, I'm going to suspend for a minute while we try and work this out, okay?
Okay. Merci.
oh, they're suspending, folks. They're suspending. Maybe it's not just Travis that's having issues now. There we go. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm looking into this as present time. But yes, it looks like. Here we are. Oh, this is old though. That's old. Sorry, folks. I'm just like reading through, pulling myself up here. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. Let's talk about this now that we can. Let's pull this down and let's pull this up, shall we? This is fascinating timing, isn't it? All right, folks. So this is just pulled up in the chat. Norway Wealth Fund makes first investment in U.S. renewable energy assets. That's what's going on here. So Norway's Sovereign Wealth Fund, the world's largest, and has made its first investment in renewable energy assets in the U.S., buying 33.3% stake in a portfolio of 17 solar plants and 5 onshore wind power facilities, it said on Tuesday. Norges Bank Investment Management will pay $425 million for its equity stake, with a total enterprise value of the portfolio of about $2.6 billion, said in a statement. The assets were located in the U.S., NBIM spokesperson said. British Columbia Investment Management Corporation and Brookfield will each take 33.3% stake in the portfolio, which has a capacity of some 2.3 gigawatts of power, NBIM said. BCI separately said the assets would be owned by 3 groups through a jointly held company, Northview Energy, which would invest a further $1.5 billion of equity in additional assets in the U.S. and Canada. And of course, as I said, that is Norway Sovereign Wealth Fund making that investment. And let's just try to make sure we pull up this today. Well, of course, where is Mr. Mark Carney going this week? He's going to Norway. So it's at the point where, sure, maybe coincidence. I don't think so. Another deal done by Brookfield last week that got announced by Reuters. Now this week, Mr. Mark Carney is going to Norway. Awesome. Great stuff, man. This is why people struggle, man. This is why people are struggling with the lack of transparency and the lack of any type of real accountability with this government. People are just sick and tired of it, dude. They're done with it. So it's just kind of a joke at this point. It's laughable. Laughable to say the least. Yeah. A lot of people are feeling a variety of different things about it at this point. And as they should. I'm curious to see if Reg is still not in the chat. No, I'm curious to get Reg's perspective on this too, which we'll talk about this Friday. But it's one of those like, sure, it's just a coincidence. The amount of times this has happened now where Brookfield does a deal, then shortly after Carney shows up. Or vice versa. It's all weird, man. Like, stop treating us like we're stupid. Like, let's be honest for 2 seconds. Oh, but they're investing in get out of here, man. It's ridiculous. Reg, what's your thoughts on this? Throw that in the chat. We'd love to see what you have to say about that. Is this just a coincidence or, actually, you know what? I'm going to call you right now via phone. We're just going to do this voice chat right now. This will be fun. We'll do this right now. If you're allowed to. Let's do this. Let's get Reg on the phone here, folks. See if he lets it happen.
Hello.
Hello, sir. All right. Is this a coincidence, or what are your thoughts on the fact that Mr. Mark Carney is going to Norway 7 days after the Sovereign Wealth Fund is doing a deal with Brookfield and others?
Oh, I'm happy to be on with you from the 13th floor of the beautiful Nova Center in center of Halifax. And I would say that if Mark Carney's Brookfield connections walked into this building a week before, I would say that he would be here the next week to announce something. Once or twice, like that's a coincidence. Maybe even giving 3 times, but this many times in a row, it's not a coincidence anymore. Like it's obvious.
Yeah. So you're feeling the way we're all feeling. That's good. I'm not the one who's crazy over here. Yeah, that's what I was wondering about. It was so funny because someone brought up in the chat, and I said, okay, let's not get crazy over here. Let's not lose our minds. And then seeing it's like, no, that's exactly what happened. Brookfield lands a deal in the green energy sector, and all of a sudden Mark Carney's visiting the week after. Surprise, surprise.
Right, and like people are just like, well, what do you mean? It's like, well, first we had China, then we had, India, then we had Australia, then we had Japan. It's like there's so many times. It's just insane, and it's funny because like Looney Hour actually had Doomsburg on there, and he was talking about the fact that his prediction is that all of this, like Carney versus Trump, stuff is actually all fugazi. That Carney and Trump actually are good friends, and that this is all just for our benefit as the voter, and that actually that Carney is helping enrich Brookfield, and Brookfield is helping enrich America. So the real elbows up is actually elbows up for America from Mr. Carney and Brookfield. Wow.
Yeah, I've been seeing that theory float around quite a bit. I can see why people feel that way. It's not like there's been no reason for people to think about that for sure.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that that's the view that I espouse, but it's definitely an interesting take, and I totally agree that it's too many times in a row for Mark Carney to go somewhere directly after Brookfield goes there and makes a deal. That it's like, yeah, it's to the point where like the only people paying attention are the Conservatives in Canada, and they know that, so they don't care because you've got the likes of CBC, as we saw with Mr. Dhanraj. It's like, no, they're going to run the narrative that supports the government. And it was funny even when Radio Canada got up there and was like, we will support the government when they support us. It's like, oh, there it is. Like
again,
in perfect French.
Yeah.
So
makes sense. Yeah, we got Share1965 says the fact that Carney comes across as boring is the excuse that he is so popular. So they ignore the fact that he's using his position to benefit Brookfield.
Yeah, it's like it's the wolf in sheep's clothing, right? It's like just blend in, like everything's okay, and it's kind of like the idea of a Canadian culture is like keep everything humming along, wash anything that might be unpleasant away, and we'll just kind of keep everything at a mediocre hum. And it's like that's just aspire for more. Come on.
That's aspire for more. Come on. Yeah, I get you, man. Well, luckily they got the technical difficulties figured out with the hearing here, so I'm looking forward to hearing more eventually when someone wants to ask Travis a question. That'd be nice.
Well, what's funny with the technical difficulties, though, the difference is that the technical difficulties with that one lady, she was on like Zoom or Skype or whatever it is that they're using.
Mm-hmm.
I can totally get that, where you'd have an audio issue where they can't hear her and everybody else can hear her. But the fact that the camera keeps blanking out and you lose all video and all sound for Travis's, only Travis's, I'm like, call me a conspiracy theorist, but that's funny. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah, couldn't agree more. Now the block is filibustering again.
Of course.
Of course. Here we are. We're about an hour into this, a little over an hour into this now. So
God bless Rachel Thomas. She must be there just like losing her mind.
yeah, it's like,
what are these jokers doing?
we have this amazing opportunity to talk to Travis Dhanraj, who's been so hard done by the CBC, and we're just going to waste time talking to everybody else about how they should get more money.
Yeah, well, it's interesting too that at least Travis has the foresight to say, I have this document, can I enter it into the record? And they're like, yes. And he's like, I have this pile of documents, can I enter that in? And they're like, yes, of course. So I think it'll be interesting to actually like we can go into that information and figure out exactly what it is that he is submitting. I know that some of it's testimony, but then there was the first piece that he talked about, like, I don't know if it was called a code of conduct for guests or what it was, but it was like a selection code of conduct. So that will be interesting to actually pull apart and yeah, maybe get into that a little bit more.
Yeah, that'll be a nice Friday conversation for sure. Yeah. So yeah, it's all good, and it's funny. The best part about all this, and this is exactly done on purpose. That's why we're gonna have to clip the heck out of this. Is the viewership is dropping by the minute because this is so boring and dry to watch. Welcome to committee, baby.
It sucks, and they do it on purpose, right?
Yeah.
It's like we need to make this very hard-hitting, very explosive thing very quiet by surrounding it by so much noise that you don't hear the explosion.
Yeah, exactly. We got to talk to people I've never heard of in my life, discuss why we should try to kick out AI from Canada. So
yeah, and it's funny because, like I said to you over text today, it's just like these poor folks have probably been asked to come appear before committee and are probably so excited to be there. They're like, this is my moment. I'm here in committee. I'm in Ottawa. What an honor. It's great. And it's like, nah, man, you're being used. They're just here to use you for distraction. Like, you were the boring part of the committee that they wanted to fill the space with, like, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. So, can we have a panel of people come in so we can have a conversation and just ask them all the questions, like ignore Travis? Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, because yeah, it is what it is, man. Well, we'll continue tuning in here, and I'll catch you later, man.
Yep, I'll talk to you soon.
All right, see ya. Peace. There you go, folks. That's Reg and his take on it, and I love that Randy from the PEG is he's got a timer on this. He's like, we've had 8 minutes on Travis so far, which I don't think is. Oh, we got Rachel Thomas coming in. Let's go. When you're kidding me, the audio is not working right now. Oh, there it is.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dhanraj. I'm curious. During your time, or do you have knowledge of the PMO, the Prime Minister's office, ever talking to the CBC with regard to how a news angle should be covered or taken, or content that should be reported on?
I know concerns were raised. From people that were on Power and Politics. I have documentation related to those concerns being raised. And I know that the folks that raise these concerns, they're fearful of, exactly the same thing that all these other folks are fearful of, right? Professional reprisal. But I also know that this was raised repeatedly. And whether or not there was influence from the former Prime Minister's office in terms of editorial decisions that were being made on Power and Politics or not, even the allegation of that on its face needs to be investigated. And from my understanding, and CBC can put out a statement correcting me if I'm wrong on this, I don't think that there was ever an investigation. That is a serious concern, right? I mean, if there are repeated, allegations made about perhaps there's too much influence here. Now, let me just say this as well. I was a reporter in Ottawa. I've been at Queen's Park. I was the Queen's Park bureau chief for Global. Reporters have sources. We all know that. But there's a line where that leads into editorial decision-making, and you have to make sure that that is clear. And if there's even an allegation that may have been crossed, you have to look deeper.
So I guess to that end then, we know that public trust toward the media in general is on the decline. We know that that is true with the CBC. There's no exception there. In your mind, then, is that lack of trust justified?
I think that right now, the CBC, by continuing to put out statements and to come to these committees and say, yeah, we might have a little bit of a problem, but, overall, we're not biased. That's gaslighting Canadians. Canadians can see that this is an issue, right? And this is folks have accused me of coming here being a cheerleader for the Conservatives. I am not a cheerleader for the Conservatives. I'm sorry. I'm not a cheerleader for the Liberals either. I was trying to do my job as a journalist, and part of that is being balanced. And so when you have, when I was pulled into these disciplinary meetings, I was told that it was editorializing because I put that Catherine Tate wouldn't come on the program, and it's unfortunate. This is unfortunate, was editorializing, right? And it was perceived bias. There's a lot of perceived bias going on that I don't see any discipline around. So I think CBC needs to have, a wake-up call here in terms of accountability. And really, that's incumbent upon this committee. I have made recommendations. There are 11 recommendations in terms of how to, move some of this forward. When it came to Mr. Cochrane, this is during the convoy, for example. We were talking about Tamara Litch, who was an individual who was involved in the convoy. We were doing a story around that. And off-the-hand remarks can be made at times. And I said, I think that she has a couple of different last names. People who live in trailers usually do. Okay, off-color remark. But if this is a pattern, right, you have to, if your staff on your own show are raising this, if people are leaving the program, you have to look a little bit deeper into it, as opposed to pulling me off the air for saying it's unfortunate the president didn't come on the show.
So the Canadian public is paying for this to the tune of about $1.4 billion. And then, of course, the government also increased that by an additional $150 million. At the end of the day, then, the public is the shareholder and also the ones that are supposed to be benefiting from this news coverage. In your estimation, what changes are needed to actually restore that trust?
Well, I think that there needs to be an overhaul when it comes to management. You have my specific recommendations, but I will also say this. I am not here as somebody who does not believe in public broadcasting. I was on Jonavision. I started as an audience coordinator when I was 19 years old at the CBC. I worked on the Air Farce. I worked on the Red Green Show. I then left. I came back. I worked at CBC Edmonton. I worked at CBC Toronto. Left. Came back again. I took a pay cut to come back to the CBC. I used to walk around the CBC Broadcast Center when I was 19 years old and sneak into the newsroom, and I thought, I want to be at this place at some point. This is the heart of this building, the news organization. And it has gotten so far away from what it was. The CBC should not be a polarizing force. It needs to bring Canadians together, and it has the infrastructure to be able to do that. But until there's a recognition of the problem from management, nothing will happen. And they fail to recognize this. I would be willing to sit down tomorrow with the new president to talk about some of this stuff, right? But good people are leaving, they're being forced out, and their concerns are being dismissed because it's about protecting reputation. Well, here's some news. I don't have to be wanting to destroy the CBC because management and executives are doing a great job of that on their own.
Thank you. We're going to try one more time with Ms. Royer to see if we have sound now that you have a new headset. You have the floor for 5 minutes. Fingers crossed.
Okay, excellent. So I'd like to begin by welcoming witnesses from my community, and that is Janice Clue and Mario Bartel of Freshet News. And I want to thank you both for your
CBC doesn't need to worry about people tearing it down. They're doing a fine enough job doing that themselves. Travis Dhanraj laying the smack down. Holy jumping. That was good. That was good to see. But you spot everything he said there. We're just nodding our heads. It's not one of those situations where, I agree. It's more of he's telling his version of his story, explaining, kind of pulling back the curtain of what's been going on and what we've been interested and the fact that we believe that this is what's been happening at CBC. And he's just like, yeah, a lot of it's happening at CBC. Even ripping on Tamara Lich, stuff like this. Like, it's just a bad culture, man. That's just bad culture. To rip on the people that you're supposed to be covering. And, I know we all do it to a degree, but that's just like, just when you're supposed to be working at a bipartisan news organization, it's rough to look at. It's rough to look at. So that was good. And it was good to see, again, more questions being directed at Travis Dhanraj, because before I cut back there, it was something along the lines of, I think Travis has probably seen, close to maybe 18 to 20 minutes. He's been asked 3 rounds of 6-minute questions, and then plus 5 of his own. So he's been on, I think he's around 20, 25 minutes at this point that he's been on of I think we're at an hour and a half now that we've been on. So that's what they call committee baby. And we're just kind of waiting around seeing what gets said, and we'll tune back in when it becomes interesting again and you're actually asking real questions of getting to the bottom of the rot that is the CBC. And and that's kind of what my process is. What I'm going to be thinking of doing here is just, once this is all said and done, we're just going to clip all the Travis components of this hearing and then just throwing that up on YouTube and sharing that everywhere, because that needs to happen. People are clipping it like crazy on social media right now, which is good. It needs to happen. I don't really care if it's me. I just care if someone does it. I think it's really important to get this news out and get this messaging out and let people know what's been going on at their beloved CBC. And I think there's the other thing too, where people, I've learned this from the Liberals as well. It's like, you guys want to take down the CBC? And it's like, not necessarily. I think the CBC does a great job of, doing Hockey Night in Canada. They did a good job covering the Olympics. Things that are not partisan or political, I think they do a decent job with. I think I'm more so interested in really taking a solid look at overhauling the management, as Travis said here, and overhauling in general the news component of the CBC, because that is what's really been an issue lately and needs to be looked at. That's what we need to see. And Vengeance 12 says, how is CBC going to spin this, I wonder? Here's the thing, is they're not going to. They're just not going to acknowledge this happened unless it gets loud enough that they have to. Then we'll see the spin doctors come out. But until then, they're going to act like this never happened. That's why it's not streaming anywhere on the CBC. That's why it's not going to be up anywhere on the CBC until it makes enough noise. And that's where we come in. That's where we have to really amplify this voice and let people know what's going on, to the point where CBC is going to have to answer for it. David Cochrane is going to have to show up on Power and Politics yet again and explain what has been going on. Why did you go missing? Why did you conveniently take a March break in late January, early February? Like, what's been going on here? So these are the questions that we will have, and they have to answer for. CBC will just call him disgruntled employee. Yeah, that's probably definitely one of the places they'll go to, for sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to tune back in here as we're getting close to the end of time here, and we'll see who ends up coming up after this.
We're kind of the proxy for people who don't go, but still may be interested. They may not be interested in sitting around for 2 hours and at a meeting, or they just weren't able to go. So we're the proxy. That's how we see ourselves. Same city council, anything we cover. We're kind of the proxy for the public. So when you are able to give a flavor for a candidate and what they said and the issues that were raised by people at all candidates meetings, that's bringing information to the larger public as well, and hopefully that then informs everybody a little bit better about when it comes to marking their ballot, which way they're going to go.
We also cover a very large.
Well, and I noticed that there was a prevalence of other sort of freelancers, journalists that we've never heard of before, that were sort of taking up the space in the news desert. And I think people were then tuning into that because they were hungry. I think the electorate is particularly hungry for.
This is all the time we have for this question. I'm sorry, Ms. Roy, but I really appreciate that you make the point that journalists have to be in the room at the school board meetings and at the city halls and in the courtrooms. And when people say AI can take over the job of journalism, I think they don't understand what journalism is then, because AI can't be in those rooms. Mrs. Thomas, you now have the floor for 5 minutes.
Awesome. I'm going to ask one quick question and pass it off to my colleague. My question is for Mike, Mr. Figgelman, or your colleagues. And my question is this. You made a statement with regards to linking the safety and security of the Jewish community here in Canada to biased coverage from the news media. And I would like you to take a moment and just expand on that in terms of the consequences that are there.
Sure. Sorry, you cut out there for a second. I'll speak to a bit of a portion, then I'm going to hand off to my colleagues on Zoom as well. The first thing is what's reported today becomes domestic and foreign policy tomorrow. And I echo Mr. Dhanraj's comments about a very, let's call it a jaundiced marketplace of ideas. What we have seen in the past couple of years, most certainly as it relates to the CBC, is the elevation of radical voices, giving them a platform, giving them undue legitimacy, which we feel really does serve to elevate the fringe and marginal voices who are traditionally, again, on the fringe, trying to work their way into the mainstream. And then it serves fundamentally to fan the flames of hatred against Israel and the Jewish community. More specifically, HR Canada Charitable Organization and InnoHives did a long-term 2-year study on the Hamas-Israel war, which found that there was this asymmetry in the CBC's coverage. Most specifically, that it elevated radical voices like Independent Jewish Voices, which is a radical anti-Zionist hate group, and giving them this platform. Again, it bestows this kind of credibility which they don't deserve. But I'll allow Dr. Haran Shaninarkis and Amanda Eskenazi to speak in more detail about their work.
So I'll just say briefly, first of all, thank you. Thank you, Mike. Can you hear me right? Hopefully? Okay. So I'm here as a scientist, and if there are any questions about the research we conducted, I'm happy to answer. I'll just say that taking into account the asymmetry that's already inherited in the Israeli-Gaza war, we found some very troubling evidence showing, for example, how the CBC is using headlines in order to promote one side of the story, such that even when you compare that to the actual reporting by the CBC and the way they...
Il y a un enjeu avec l'audio, encore une fois.
Madam Chair, there's an issue with the audio. The interpreters are struggling to interpret.
Okay.
I'm sorry, we don't have good sound for your intervention there.
Is that better right now? Or if not, maybe Amanda can take that? Is it?
I'm sorry, no.
Okay.
Okay, maybe I can try to speak to this then, and just sort of offer one final thought on this, that, my colleague Haran is a scientist, and he deals with data and numbers and, objective truth. I'm also a scientist, but a different kind. I'm a social scientist, and I look at behavior and trends and sort of human behavior and how people react to what it is that they see in the news and what they are presented with. And when we have a organization like the CBC, which is a Canadian institution that is supposed to be well respected, has a history in our country of being the place where you are supposed to be able to get real, honest news about what's going on in the world. And they are beating a very one-sided drum, a very one-sided narrative. And that's what's being offered to Canadians. Of course, Canadians are going to be angry. They're going to be upset because what they're being told, the reality is upsetting and angering. And when you only present one side of what is going on, you end up with a very ideologically, you end up with an ideology. You don't end up with reality and with the facts. And so I think when you are feeding Canadians, the CBC is not telling Canadians how to think about an issue. They're showing Canadians what to think about the issue, and that should not be the role of our public broadcaster. And as to just return it to your question, Mrs. Thomas, that if you have consistently one-sided narratives like this, of course you are going to have people who feel that they need to do something about it. And when we have one-sided narratives that demonize an entire group of people, because that's what's happening, then of course you are going to have people who are angry about that and feel that they need to do something about that. And that, unfortunately, is what we're seeing on the streets in Canada right now and what we saw this weekend in Toronto.
Thank you. Mr. Miles, you now have the floor for 5 minutes.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you to everybody for being here today and getting this study started off in a very lively way. I want to talk, I think we're all very interested in making sure that there's a diversity of voices in journalism, and that's what makes great journalism. One thing I'm curious about is the right balance between, how we can create an ecosystem where the private broadcasters and journalists thrive as well as a public broadcaster, like what the balance looks like, especially in rural communities. I find that one thing, and I think it speaks to what's been mentioned, is that often rural voices are not actually, particularly as more and more newspapers in small towns close, more and more radio stations in small towns close. How do we make sure that things aren't centralized just to the cities of Canada, but the voices of rural Canadians are also part of all the conversations we're having? Maybe I'll start with Paul to speak about that, if you get some thoughts.
So much. I think one of the programs that's important for rural voices is the Local Journalism Initiative. Many of our members would be a couple, let's say perhaps in their mid-70s. They own the local community newspaper. Their kids have moved to the city or doing something else. And the LJI is a way of getting a reporter into that community, invested in that community, covering cops, courts, city hall, that kind of stuff. So I think the LJI, in terms of the rural coverage, is absolutely critical. One thing I will say about the CBC, and this is an issue in particular in rural communities, CBC has been poaching journalists from community newspapers. And this is a problem. There's a terrific column written by Tim Schultz of the St. Albert Gazette, and I think you should all read it. It's in his own paper, and it's also in the National Post. But take a look at that. I mean, we're losing journalists to the CBC. They're getting more money, better benefits. And listen, we don't begrudge the CBC, but I'll give you just one example. Jeff LG, who's an entrepreneur who owns Village Media, Jeff trained a journalist. The journalist was hired by the CBC, went to Toronto. Jeff sort of felt okay about that. The journalist is in Toronto for a while. Then they moved that same journalist back to the Sioux, competing with him, and he trained that journalist. And that's a real issue. It's an issue, in Franco-Manitoban communities, for example. This is an issue that, we're very concerned about is the poaching of talent. And again, it's a free labor market, but to actually go after and pick off people from community newspapers in communities like Banff, it's just not fair.
I think it's part of what I'm looking to get at too is it's some of those places of conflict or whatever between the two sectors and how we can actually seek to support both in the ideal world and to make sure that those voices are not, particularly in the rural communities, not dismissed. Are there others?
I mean, I think, one of the challenges that we've got is Canada Post, and just in terms of sort of, distribution. So a lot of our members, these are a printed product, a community newspaper. Canada Post has made a decision that if you have a Canadian Tire flyer in your newspaper, it falls under something called the Consumer's Choice Program. So if a community says, for example, I don't want junk mail, essentially then you're not able to deliver that, newspaper to the community with a Canadian Tire flyer. And the Canadian Tire flyer, that might be for that particular publisher, $75,000 a year in revenue. That's 2 reporters. So I think there's lots that the federal government can do to ensure that rural community news outlets thrive. And the CBC is one avenue, Canada Post is another.
Are you encouraged at all by the idea of CBC moving into rural communities and broadening the base of some of their stations?
Look, our view is CBC should be complementary, not competitive. And if they move into communities that are already well served, that's an issue. They should move to areas that aren't served. And when you look at the list that the CBC put forward in the editor's blog, they've done it twice in the last sort of year or so. Many of these communities are already well served by community newspapers, community radio stations, and so I think that's something we have to look at. They shouldn't be sort of predatory in the marketplace, if you will.
Very, very good. I had just one quick question on ad. Do I have a little bit of time? Just speaking with the ad thing, when you're saying, I'm curious to know when you say private enterprise is actually kind of bought into local advertising even more than the government, what motivates that?
Because we're a great way of reaching Canadians. Right. 86% of Canadians read newspaper content each week. When you advertise in a community newspaper, it's in a brand safe environment. Some of these digital ads you have no idea where your ad is going to wind up on, some porn site or something or other, right? So we're a great way to reach Canadians. We're cost effective. And, we would, if we're getting ads from, the banks, the airlines, the telcos, et cetera, how come we're not getting ads from our own government? All of the federally regulated industries, the grocery stores, they all advertise with newspapers, and yet we don't really see a dime from the federal government. That's a problem.
Private sector.
But your time's up.
Sorry.
Mr. Moss.
Thank you, Paul.
I gave you a bit of leeway there, but there's a limit. Monsieur Champoux, je vous passe la parole pour.
Mr. Champoux, I will give you the floor for 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Fegelman.
Yeah, just who I want to hear from, Mr. Champoux, yet again. Holy smokes, this is a dry one, folks. It's a dry one. But at least we're getting some good intel. While this is playing and I'm letting that record through, I've been kind of sifting through social media and seeing just how much Dhanraj's clips from this hearing are getting cycled just through social right now. He is not disappointed. He has dropped incredible truth bombs on the public, and we love to see it all at the same time. But again, it is funny even hearing that last individual talking about, we get ad dollars from grocery stores and these different businesses, telcos, airlines, but we can't get any ad dollars from our own government. Wow, now that is the sound of someone who loves to win, isn't it? He loves to win. And talking about newspapers, like who reads a newspaper anymore? What are we doing here? Wild. Airbrush by Woodward says, I do miss reading the newspaper every morning, then washing the black off my hands. Oh yeah, those are the days, weren't they? Oh, those were the days. Rhonda says, I grew up in a small southern Alberta that had a community newspaper, and they still have it. They do an excellent job reporting on all the local news. Yeah, as I said, I don't necessarily think I do believe there's a place to have beat reporters and reporters in these smaller communities. I think it's really important. I think the issue is there's such an old school perspective on how to run a news agency that there's other things that you can 100%, you can either automate, you can make cuts in, you can switch up and save money on, and then put that money into putting reporters on the ground. We don't need it. Oh, here we go. We got something good here.
With concerns and complaints, would you characterize that as harassment?
Pas du tout, parce que
Not at all. My constituents expect that I do the work, and they elected me, and they have the right to contact me directly. You could contact the media that hires these people. You could be in touch with the CBC ombudsman. That's how it works. You don't directly contact the journalist. It becomes personal. It becomes an attack on the work and often the integrity of the person, because you are going after someone who shouldn't be receiving thousands of nonsense emails. As politicians, we expect this. It's part of the job. Journalists shouldn't be undergoing this. So go after elected officials, those who manage CBC Radio-Canada, La Presse, Le Devoir, but let journalists do their work and have comments from their bosses. Don't you think that would be the right way to proceed?
Regard ourselves as an added layer of editorial oversight. In a world where we're hearing of massive cutbacks in the Canadian journalism landscape, where there's less verification, we found that actually most journalists value the work that we do because that may surprise you because we're pointing out the unfairness.
Est-ce que vous êtes en mesure dans ce cas-là, parce qu'il me reste très peu de temps?
In that case, because I have very little time, I'm sorry. Are you able, because I have very little time left, are you able to provide the names of journalists who support your work, journalists and media, not commentators, credible ones? Which journalists support the style of approach you have with journalists regarding the quality of their work? We could have this conversation for a long time. I think the chair will interrupt me soon, but if you want to respond to what I've just said, I would be pleased to read your comments. You could write to the committee, send all of the documents you wish, and we can even pick up this conversation, you and I, afterwards, because I think this is a very important issue. It's about the credibility of your comments, which could be very good in this debate. Perhaps they can provide that information to the committee. If you can come back with those names that Mr. Shampoo has asked for, that would be later that we would accept that information, because we're out of time.
Request to go 2 minutes for each party before we finish this conversation, before we get to Mr. Shampoo. Is that okay? Everybody okay with that? Okay. Mrs. Thomas, you have 2 minutes.
I'll be taking this 2 minutes. Yeah, Mr. Fegelman, it was very interesting when you said that you indicated that a CBC executive said that the network shouldn't refer to Hamas as a terrorist group, even though the government of Canada has recognized them as a terrorist group since 2002. Why should the public be alarmed at this?
Well, in the Canada Gazette, it is publicly listed that they are a terrorist group. Their day job is to strap a suicide vest on themselves and with the intent of maiming and murdering innocents. When our media sanitize language, it effectively legitimizes the actions, or at least it distorts. People aren't fully aware that what these people do, what their intentions are, is to wipe Israel and Jews off the map. So it is really misrepresenting the facts on the ground. Language matters. Diction matters.
Now, your organization did do a deep dive into the coverage that happened throughout CBC since October the 7th. Can you just reiterate some of that coverage? And you allege it was highly biased.
Well, I'd like to recount a couple of examples of CBC bias that we've come across. The first, on February 16th, CBC Radio Canada's correspondent Elisa Serrett, who was later suspended, uttered an anti-Semitic trope on air when claiming that, and I quote, the Israelis, in fact the Jews, finance a lot of American politics and control a big machine. It's like clear-cut anti-Semitic trope. CBC continues to use reporters who've expressed radical anti-Israel views. They have a journalist named Sarah Jabakanji who in 2021 signed an open letter boldly proclaiming that there should be more pro-Palestinian coverage. That's just at the CBC. I would refer you to my colleague Amanda Eskenazi, who can talk in specifics about some of the results of the study that they did about the CBC's bias.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. We just have 2 minutes for everybody. It's a really quick. It's like we call it the lightning round, kind of like a game show. Mr. Miles, you have 2 minutes.
Sure. You know, I think I'll just go right back to Paul because we get a little interrupted. I'm sorry to keep on going back at you, but because I am curious about this advertising piece, because I hear you. I hear what you're saying as an opportunity, obviously, to support these, journalists and the work of these papers and broadcasters. But at the same time, there has been a decline in private advertising in newspapers, certainly. Like that's a fact as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So just for ballpark numbers, so advertising in Canadian newspapers a dozen years ago would have been about $3.5 billion. Today, it's probably 900 million or so.
Okay, so the private sector has also abandoned that route.
I wouldn't say abandoned. I'd say they've changed in terms of their their spend, but we're still doing, okay in terms of a lot of community newspapers. I mean, if you pick up a community newspaper, you're going to see the ad from the Chevy dealer. You're going to see, the ad from the Remax agent. Like we still do okay. But disproportionately, we don't do well with government, and in particular with the federal government.
That's interesting. And is it because they believe that this is where the eyeballs are? They should go where the eyeballs are? Is that not?
So the government has an agency of record, right? And I think this dates back to the sponsorship era, or the sponsorship scandal from years ago. So the government has an agency of record that makes the decision. It used to be COSAT, it's now WPP. I think that those firms have done what is easiest and most profitable for them, which is programmatic advertising, those ads that just sort of pop up everywhere. You develop much more of an impression. If you take out a full-page ad in the Carrière de Saint-Hyacinthe, par exemple, you're going to make much more of an impact than a little programmatic advertising that pops up.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate you.
I know there's lots of individual MPs advertising in our local media, but that's a different budget, and I won't get into it. La parole est à vous, Monsieur Champoux.
Now you have the floor, Mr. Champoux, 2 minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't know I'd have this additional 2 minutes. I'd feel bad if I didn't give Mr. Fegelman the opportunity to respond to my comments. I thought we would continue our conversation by email or otherwise, but Mr. Fegelman, I'll give you a minute to respond to what I said earlier if you wish. If you want to pick up.
I didn't hear your question when you first asked. If you don't mind asking the question, forgive me, the audio is terrible for me.
La question là que je viens de vous poser.
Yeah.
The question I just asked? Well, I'm giving you the opportunity to respond to what I said earlier. We ran out of time for you to respond.
Est-ce que la traduction, est-ce que vous avez la traduction en anglais?
Are you having the interpretation into English? Do you hear the interpretation? Testing on the English channel.
We want to make sure that our system is working properly. Is it that you can't hear or that there's no translation?
I can hear the translation.
English channel, if I speak, can you hear the English? Is the English interpretation coming through? Is there a problem? Testing on the English channel. 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me? Interpretation into English. Is this working for you? Can you hear? Okay. Okay. I didn't have my microphone on. Is it working now? Is it working better?
Okay. Allez-y, Monsieur Champoux.
Go ahead, Mr. Champoux. My question wasn't really a question, Mr. Fegelman. I was giving you the opportunity to respond to what I said earlier. We were interrupted. We ran out of time. So I am proposing that you respond to my comments for a minute rather than having this conversation later. I was just giving you the floor to respond.
I'll give you an example of some of the dialogue we had in recent days. We filed a complaint with the Globe and Mail to their standards editor because they had published a column that had said that Israel takes Palestinians hostage, which it does not do, which is a violation of international law. We filed a complaint. They received it, they appreciated it, and they took corrective measures to issue a correction. That's the kind of what we consider to be constructive dialogue that is important. And I would also say, with your comment about alleged harassment, if any of our subscribers, we have about 80,000 subscribers from coast to coast, if anyone engaged with a member of the media in a way that we felt was unprofessional, strident, knee-jerk reactionary, we would be the very first to either try to sensitize them to our concerns, and if they weren't listening and were uncooperative, we would take them off our list. We don't think that that is helpful. We think it's actually quite counterproductive.
Donc, si les journalistes émettaient, excusez-moi, si des journalistes...
So if journalists told you they were embarrassed, they were bothered, there's little time, but if journalists told you, we don't agree with the way you're operating, we'd prefer for comments, criticism, discussion of that nature be done with the editors or the bosses of newsrooms rather than journalists directly, you would be open to that? You would be open to that dialogue?
We're certainly open to any kind of dialogue with any different leverage point in the Canadian media landscape. Our challenge, though, is what we oftentimes encounter is window dressing of accountability and evasive efforts in terms of implementation of journalistic standards. Meaning, we could bring a grievance to a journalist editor, and they may not reply and are totally evasive. And we think that that's quite problematic. So I think there is a necessity for an oversight mechanism. I think, broadly speaking, our goal should be that a very Canadian response with civic engagement, because I think that's fundamentally constructive.
Ouais, c'est là qu'on n'est pas d'accord, Monsieur Feigelman. Je pense que
That's where we don't agree, Mr. Fegelman. I think at a certain point we have to accept the processes in place. It's not up to journalists or workers who didn't ask to have that relationship to have that harassment directed at them. I think there needs to be a line drawn somewhere, and I think the way you proceed with your call to contact journalists directly by email, I think you're crossing that line. That's my opinion. I think on that we can end and we can talk about the motion. Yes, exactly. If you wish to begin, Mr. Shampoo, you can introduce. No? Let's go ahead. Well, we can continue. 5 minutes.
If you'd like, we're going to discuss the motion that Mr. Shampoo rose earlier today. You don't have to leave. You can stay to the end, but we have finished with our questioning.
All right, so that's done. I'm glad that we spent 2 hours with you today for about 25 minutes of Travis Dhanraj's time. That was awesome, wasn't it? So we're going to clip all that up, throw that up on social media, put that all up for you because I think it's really important. We've already got one clip up on Instagram as we speak, and we're going to continue moving this forward. I'm bummed out that this has took me out from being able to do my afternoon's show. However, it'll be electric to be back on here with you discussing the news tomorrow morning, 9 Eastern time, 10 a.m. Atlantic time, and I look forward to seeing all of you. So